Well,
Okay.
you can say Dina Al Bayati. Yeah.
Dina Al Bayati. See, that was a cheat because you said it to me right when I was. But we were just talking about how of all the places you ended up in the U.S. when you came. So did you come straight to Houston when you came from Iraq?
Yeah, we came straight to Houston. I don't remember if it was like a choice where you can decide what state, but we transited to Jordan from Baghdad to Jordan, and from Jordan straight to New York to one of the main airports in New York, and which was like 1 hour, didn't take much, but that was like the America that I always imagined, and then landed to Houston. Yeah,
That would be the America you will. If you're in New York,
New
like
York.
that
Yeah,
would be. Is that JFK? I think it might be
yes,
JFK.
airports. Yeah.
I remember. I remember there was um one of the Kennedys' daughters was trying to get into a bar, and the bouncer was like, and this was in New York, and the bouncer's like, "I'm sorry, I don't know if I can let you in if you don't have ID." And she goes, "They named the airport after us."
Mm.
She's like, "You know who I am. I I have an airport named after me." But anyways, yeah, it's America. And we were also saying how you ending up in Houston was perfect for you to find powerlifting because powerlifting it's like a mecca in Houston. It's super special. It's crazy. You end up you and this is so our story, just for a little background, I was commentating PA Nats and I saw you with Arian and Jonathan and seen you around the competition, obviously, and we have mutual people that I followed you on social media, but I hadn't met you. And then we met, and I had already met like obviously like Arian and Jonathan and whatever a bunch of times. And so we briefly said, "Hey, what's up? How you doing? Whatever." And then I was I was gonna have a flight and I lost, hopefully no one at my work is listening, lost my laptop for my day job, left it in a freaking restaurant, and the restaurant didn't open till after like a restaurant in the hotel, and it didn't open again until after my flight would already been gone. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't leave without my work laptop. Like I'm a dead man. And I don't want to tell them I left it in a freaking restaurant in Reno. So I'm like, oh God, I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. And I bumped in you when I was crazy stressed. And I don't know if you could tell. And I was like, oh man. So I'm running around trying to sort this out. And then I could bump my flight back, and it was going to get bumped back like 5 hours. I was going to be chilling there, just chilling with everyone else was leaving. And I bumped into you again. And I was like, Dina, and you're like, hey, Ryan. And I'm like, everything's all good. Like I went from being so stressed and anxiety to we're all good. Everything's good. And we chilled right by the escalator and we were just shooting the shit talking. And I was telling you about me, you were telling me about you. And you have like it is an absolutely riveting story. Like I was like, holy smokes. And it just goes to show you how you like earlier that day when I saw you and I had all this stress on me and hey, how's it going? Whatever. It's just you don't know who's around in your life. You don't know the background. You don't know the story. You don't know like how often do we walk around and have no idea. And then when you have a minute to sit there because I had hours and you're just talking to somebody because you have a common interest in powerlifting. And it's crazy how life brings you together. How powerlifting can bring you together. And you just sit there and start talking like, oh my gosh. And we went on for like a while there. And I remember leaving like that was a crazy, impactful conversation on me. Like I couldn't stop thinking about your story and what you were telling me. And then I went onto your social media and everything was different after I heard your story. Like I'd seen you on social media and you're like, yeah, we follow each other on social media. No, you're a power lifter. Again, we got common friends, but it all rings a little bit different now that I know your story. And this just shows you how like you see someone, you see their posts, you see what they're doing, and you might be like, okay, cool, that's cool. But you have no idea the context of why this is as meaningful. And then after talking to you, all your posts hit way different. And I was like, whoa, it was wild. Life is funny. I was so grateful that I lost my laptop.
I think you always meet everyone for a reason. And when you mentioned something about the stories, we all have a story, and I am a big believer that as individuals, we remember stories, because stories are impactful in everything that we do. And when you get to know the story behind someone or something, just like a brand or a business or whatever it is, it
Mhm.
makes it even way bigger meaning and bigger impact, through stories. And that's why, like, a lot of athletes, they do what they do for a reason. They need to probably more show it more and showcase it more. But I'm sure 1,000% there is a reason why anyone is doing the thing that they do right now, for sure.
Yeah. Like we were kind of talking about how powerlifting is a strength sport. And there are so many different reasons why people gravitate towards being stronger, getting stronger, or showing how strong you are. So many, and even though it's physical, it means more than just that. Um, and it's a symbol. Like you become a symbol when you're strong. And it's a gift and a curse. It could be a burden at times because you got to be strong inside. People just assume you're strong inside and out sometimes, and like the whole nine. But this is why, I've often thought about how like powerlifting is not as big a sport as some of the big, baseball, basketball, etc. But over the years doing the King of This podcast, the amount of times I've sat down and talked to people about their backgrounds and stories, I can't believe like how first off how genuinely lucky I am to be in my position to have these conversations, and how many people in powerlifting have these stories and have this. And I do think it's not just, I think it's because people gravitate towards being stronger. It pushes you that direction, depending on your background,
Mhm.
why you made that choice. Why did you choose a strength sport? And, you know, it is looking at this, you ending up in Houston, you could not have been in a better place for you to be like literally, you're in Russell Orhey's gym. You were at Russell Orhey's gym when he had a gym. And you were the crazy thing, you were there when I was there. We didn't
Yeah.
like no, we didn't we hadn't met yet. But when I did a podcast there, his podcast there, you were there. And it's crazy because like I would have had no idea yet. I wouldn't have like talked to you yet and known. It's I don't know. Life is funny. But I remember getting on the plane. I remember like afterwards, we were shared a couple stories, and I
Yeah.
shared you a story about Bobby Shez, who was going to go on he was going to be on the American national team for boxing, and he missed the flight. And I was telling you about how like things happen for a reason sometimes, or you just be grateful, be like, all right, not the worst thing in the world. What happened anyways? If you change one thing, you change everything. If you didn't end up in Houston, you don't find powerlifting. I don't know. Your story's still riveting, but there's something about all your posts and everything hit different because you're a strong woman, right?
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for thinking that I'm trying to get stronger. There's always this not ending expectation. I think I'm still starting because I consider myself fairly new to powerlifting, but we always have to be better. We always have like very high expectations.
mm,
And the time when I met you in nationals in Reno, that's when my expectations got even higher of because the standards are never ending. And there's also this pressure and bigger vision because being someone who's not uh, as common in such sports, which is strength sport and powerlifting, like being an Arab and Muslim woman too. So it's just like a rare thing. And of course, I mean, strength sports also is like a growing sport too, like you mentioned.
mm.
So it's just becoming popular. But speaking of the airport thing, just the traveling thing, don't lose your laptop again, please.
I look, Pete Spence is like, you need those air tags. I think
Yeah.
I told you, I was like, I got air tags. We're all good now. I have to use them. It's crazy. I've done this before, by the way. Not necessarily my laptop, but I freaking lose things. I just put things down or whatever just to get comfortable. I'm like, this is bothering me. Let me put this down and get comfortable. And just walk. You know, one of the things is it's a gift and a curse. It's me though. I get wrapped up in a conversation. Like I get really into a conversation, which is good for like podcasting, commentary, whatever. Great. But then after like 2 hours in the conversation, my phone is the last thing, or my whatever that I put down 2 hours earlier, is the last thing on my mind. And I will leave like, wow, that was a great conversation I had. I'm really glad. And I'm just get up and walk away. And people around who don't know me, like, did that guy just leave his laptop? I think he just left. Like this, that's me. I'm that dude. But at least, so then,
Yeah.
you change one thing, you change everything. For me to like, it's just the way I am that I get so engrossed in things and I just don't even care by the end. But yeah,
It's okay. We learn.
it's an issue. People around me got to be looking. I have people at work are literally, I got a couple buddies at work who are like, my man, and they'll remind me, don't leave my office without grabbing this. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm always, I got buddies who are on the lookout. Like we're about to get out of a cab or Uber or whatever. And they'll be like, Six, you got your phone, man. And I'm like, I've got my phone. Like, all right then. All right then. Good. People every now and then double check with me. Um, but yeah, and well, how did you find Arian Kamesi as your coach?
So so here's the a little backstory is when I started powerlifting, one of you know how content and Instagram started growing with the sports.
Mhm.
So that was in 2021. One of the girls that I saw that was still getting popular on Instagram was Leah Bavois. So I think the more that I just got to see her content, that was the beginning of when I started really, really getting interested in powerlifting. And through time, um, as she started working with the strength guys, um, I just became very interested in the strength guys and like their ways of like the athletes that they have, the content that they post for their strength training, their programming, and my vision is I want to, become the best athlete that I want to become. And I saw that through the way they work with the athletes. And so I was like, okay, it's time to invest and it's time to really like just because I see myself truly like being in this sport and just getting better at it. And that's how Ariane Khamisi, he interacts with a lot of powerlifters, and I saw that he was within the strength guys. So it's like, okay, like this is perfect. So let's reach out, and yeah, I just submitted the application, start working with them, and it's going to be about like 7 months working with them officially. So it hasn't been a long time.
No, not super long actually. Just kind of, do you like it? Is it like, because I believe their reputation is a lot of volume.
Hmm. It is a lot of volume. Like I've never done this much volume in my life. I was like, are we ever going to max out? Are we ever going to attempt like because I see all these
You're like, you guys know I'm powerlifting, right? You know I'm going to do singles.
I'm like, what is my max? I just didn't test it yet. And I think I almost tested a few times. So I never really actually knew. It was kind of like based on how much repetitions and percentage and volume we have done. And it's actually pretty effective. Like I feel the strongest I feel like at a lighter body weight, and it's just amazing, honestly. And if I'm actually doing less volume, it seems to be to me like I'm cheating or something. I'm like, why is it only 2 reps or 1 rep? So it seems to be too easy.
Interesting how it all works. Like, well, first off, men and women acclimatize to it differently. I've read that women handle volume better and can get their, like, for instance, triple closer to the 1 rep max than men can. I don't, I think there's studies on this. I don't know for sure. I'd have to ask Eric Helms, who's often on the podcast, but so that's one thing. But also, so like they have like obviously like Leah Bavois, Slee the Machine, Jessica Espinal. I mean, they got tons of world-class women, but they also have like world-class men, obviously Taylor Atwood and my friend Kafui Hochiyame, who's a partner in King of the Lifts. He doesn't do the podcast, but he's a partner in it. He's with the strength guys, and he's the first Canadian 83 to go over 800 kilos. And I don't think he still is right now. At the time when he won the North American Championship, he was the highest rated Canadian of all time on good lift points. So I mean, he's one of the better male athletes. He'll be at the World Championships too. But so they have like I know I mean they have more than that. I'm probably missing a bunch of people, but yeah, they're obviously it's proven. But volume, I mean, it's it's interesting how some people get like some services get like reputations for how they approach the training. And with the strength guys, if you don't like volume, well, you're gonna have a rough go of it. But if your body can handle it, oh my gosh, are they gonna up you to like, top tier levels? But yeah, were you with a different coach before that?
So officially, yeah, and officially I started in August 2021. I worked with my previous coach, and it was great, as a beginner. But then also through time, because I just got so interested in the Strength Guys programming, and although I truly appreciated how my first coach, he helped me develop from scratch. Like I knew nothing about powerlifting, and I competed in a local meet. He handled me in that competition. It was I mean it was literally a year after or a few months after my like when I started working with him. So I worked with him previously, but then I was like, we always have to change direction, which was unfortunate. But yeah, that was one coach basically when I started 2021, 2022, the first competition, and 2023, and then 2024 right now. So it's been 2 years officially competing.
How
Yeah.
did you end up in corrupted strength? Of all the gyms, you ended up in corrupted strength.
I was actually in the DMV area in DC, and I was training at a gym called DMV Iron. But then when I came back to Houston, I'm like, which gym could be the best gym that I can train in for powerlifting? Of course, knowing corrupted strength. So I chose corrupted strength. And unfortunately, it closed at a time when I was kind of new to the gym, but it was just such a great gym, such a great environment, training around champions, such strong and serious people. Like it was like a dream. It's just the environment itself. Like once you come in, it's a different world, basically.
Gotta be kind of crazy, like showing up. You had like Russ, but all obviously like Crennan and all these people are like social media influencers. You came in one day to train and freaking King Alyssa is on the couch talking to Russ doing a podcast. Like it's probably so weird to be like of all the gyms you chose, like, oh my gosh. And you were talking about the when you're in Houston, whatever gym you go to, there's a lot of powerlifting, like world-class powerlifters in Houston. It's a mecca. And you're saying how like the energy you could get. I remember, like, I know exactly what you mean because when I first started powerlifting, I remember we had like three guys who were on the Canadian national team in the same gym I was going to. And I was so, when you find something new and you're like, oh, it's
Mm.
like, I love this. You get so into it. Before, it's like the honeymoon phase of your relationship with the sport. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this has been going on the whole time. And I just found it now. And I was so into it, so infatuated with it. And the vibe, like being around these guys who were in newspapers. Like I remember reading a national newspaper and my gym was in there and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And I would show I was a nerd. I would show up to the gym even when I didn't have a training day,
Mm.
just to kick it, just to be like, because other people were like, if I knew like Alex is going for some big singles today, I'm gonna show up and like, I don't know, man. I'm watching them, spotting them. This is when sometimes they had equipment. Do you need help getting this on, like wrapping someone's knees or whatever? If if someone's like, can you help me wrap my knees? You're like, holy shit, you want me to wrap my knees? I was like, oh my God. All right, hopefully I do this right. And like it was I was so, I don't know. You for real do get inspired by the energy of watching people get after it. And that's why you ending up in Houston, my goodness. Can you imagine you ended up in like Portland or any place? I don't know, Portland might have powerlifters, but
I have no idea what's out there. But it's good you mentioned this. I'm a big believer, and I always say it. And I think I came to a realization even more becoming a powerlifting athlete when it makes you understand life better in certain ways. That one thing is you, whether you're an elite athlete, whether you are the most successful person or the smartest person, you always should surround yourself by our individuals who are better than you, who are stronger than you, smarter than you, because it teaches you. We always learn something from each other. Although as athletes, we could probably not interact as much because each person is focused on their own work, but there is something that you can gain from being in that type of environment, and being surrounding yourself by individuals who are very strong and very smart. And I have to be honest with you, I was actually very intimidated to go to corrupted, especially kind of also being new, considered powerlifting and stuff, being in that environment. But I had to, also as an introvert, I don't speak to anyone, I don't interact with anyone. So I was very
really?
scared.
Are
I was
you
very,
introvert? Because the thing is, when I met you, you were brave. Like you came up to me initially at the meet and were like, "Hey,
I
um,
forced myself.
well, that's you know what you got to sometimes, right?
That you have to get out of your comfort zone. And
Right.
when I went to that gym, I truly really, got out of my comfort zone. And then it was the best decision because the most scariest things that you do are always the best decisions that you do. And because maybe there are just things in your head that is just, doubts and fear and things, but they're totally normal. And that's what powerlifting have taught me mainly, because anything that we fear, anything that we are scared of to do, just you can do it. You can prove yourself wrong. You can just not let it get into you. Just do it. Yeah.
When you feel that fear and anxiety, usually it is like you know you have to do this. Like when you feel that, like, oh my gosh, I'm out of my comfort zone here. Do I walk into this gym and you have like guys like Russ and all these other people there, and you're like, holy smokes, am I out of my league here? What am I doing here? But you know in your heart of hearts, now you got to chill in there for a minute, hang in there and see what happens, and you're that's when growth is going to come.
Mhm.
Very rarely does growth come inside your comfort zone. You got to get uncomfortable to grow. Almost always, you have to be uncomfortable to grow. That powerlifting is literally that. You are literally putting your body under duress to grow. Your body has to go get stressed and duressed and fatigued out, and then it'll grow. And it teaches you that. And if you apply that, yeah, it's but I could totally see where you'd walk into that gym and be like, holy smokes, this place is like the place of legends. This is the place you saw, on social media and everything. And so many people even just come through that gym. And you found yourself in the right spot. Now that it's closed, where did everybody kind of disperse to? Is everyone kind of scattered all over or
Yeah, there's just multiple gyms of powerlifting gyms. And because Houston is such a big city, it's like, driving, you could drive like an hour to the gym or, easily. So there's, for
Mm.
example, the gyms are inside gym. Some of us, I train personally there and I see a lot of powerlifters train there. There is 21st Strength Club, I think it's called, Barbell Club, um, and then TSS. So there's just like dispersed, like multiple locations. Yeah.
are you still in the same gym as Russ?
Yeah. Yeah.
You are okay. Well, there you are.
A lot of I see a lot of I see Russ. I honestly, to be honest with you, when I go to the gym, I don't I don't see anything in front of me. I do maybe see people, but I just go in I might look angry. I don't know. Like I'm sorry for I'm
I
sorry.
might look. I love that you said that. Probably look pissed off. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, it's just like I'm on my serious phase, even if it's an RPE 4 day. It's just I take those days as important as the very um very hard, like difficult days. So I just go in there, do my work, and not much communication. I can communicate after training or outside the gym, to be honest with you, because I just take that place is like the place where it's just that's you, and that's you have work to do on an easy day or a difficult day.
In terms of like culturally speaking, is there a lot of Arab women doing like strength sports like this? Or is that because I've had people on the podcast? I remember I had on a couple ladies from Asia, and we're talking about in Japan and Korea, and they were saying legit women over there are taught to take up less space and be humble, or if you were compliment them, like, no, no, like you
Mhm.
say it like that, like you fluff off a compliment, you don't take it in, and you're taught to be smaller, physically smaller, and present yourself smaller. Don't take up room. And powerlifting is so for them as powerlifters, it's very rare for a woman to be lifting weights and getting stronger, etc. And I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of Arab Muslim women in it. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a stereotype, and maybe there are, and maybe it's not that. But is it common to have that?
It's not common. I mean, I there are some very, very strong women who, let's say, like there's a junior champion from Lebanon. Her name is Joya.
Oh
She's
yeah, she's crazy good.
she's yes, and it's so amazing to see other Arabic women, Middle Eastern, North Africa region who compete, but they have so much challenges that they face. And obviously, I'm not in their environment because I cannot speak on their behalf, but there are just, it's very, very rare. And it's just starting to grow. And based on the reactions that when I started to appear more on social media just recently, and it grew so fast, I was not expecting this much growth on social media. Based on the reactions that I have received, a lot of positive reactions, but also a lot of um, just cyberbullying, things that it's not as rare. And I understood because it's such a new sport, and to see it is like not a common thing. So there's a lot of misconceptions, misinformation, um, and they view strength as something else rather than what they viewed me. They're like, oh, we're surprised you look like this. We're surprised you're lifting this weight, but you don't look like it. So there's like a misconception about, and that's why how I knew there's like, it's a very rare thing for sure. Yeah.
Well, first off, yeah, you have like don't you have like over 40,000 followers already?
Already, yeah. It just started growing very fast.
Yeah, what do you attribute that to? Because we're going to get into like your story and all the other things you're doing. Is that from powerlifting, from all the other things you're doing in terms of being an activist, or is it a mixture of both? How quickly has all this happened? Like, because it's happening quickly.
It happened quickly, yes. It happened the day actually just right before the um Classic Nationals, like the day before. I posted a reel, and it was a reel out of my comfort zone, a showcasing like being an Arab woman, Iraqi woman who's doing powerlifting. And I just use the algorithm to get the engagement. And since then, when I started showcasing that, people just became interested in seeing it. And I received messages from girls and even comments. We want to be like you, or we want to, what is this sport? How do we start this sport? And ever since I just sat down and like I started this for a reason because I was curious about it. And I saw how it positively impacted my life. And I think it also can positively impact them. And they just there needs to be more information. There needs to be more exposure. and you, based on the reactions, it makes sense, and it just is growing very fast ever since.
Is it, I mean, is this kind of surprising to you the way it's gone? Was this something, hey, you know what? I can enter into the sport, like the way it's kind of married itself together with everything else you're doing. Is that just kind of like, wow, okay, didn't really see that coming, but here we are, like, or how did it all come about, do you think?
I had a vision. My vision from the very beginning, being a beginner in powerlifting, like years ago, I didn't. I was just learning powerlifting, but since last year, the way I viewed the sport, I saw there's like much potential of how it can grow in that region, and especially being, like, I would say, a unique, uncommon person to do the sport. Um, so it came mainly from powerlifting, but the way I viewed it, I saw it more than just powerlifting and strength. I viewed it more as a social impact because my background is an activist, and being an activist and working within the NGO sector, you get to think about how can I make an impact? What's making an impact? And I realized that sports is just a way that it can support so many individuals, like youth, so many different age ranges in different communities. Um, and that was like my vision from, like, when I started taking powerlifting more serious. And I guess it just manifested by itself because I'm trying to make the best out of this platform that I have, and I take social media very serious. Um, and I'm trying to just expand it and improve it over time and see what are the ways to do it. So it's a mix of everything, and I'm kind of learning along the way, like how to, how to use it the best way.
I seen a video of yours where you talked about, um, you said this was the day that everything changed in your life. And I saw this video after I talked to you. And when I saw it, and at the end, it was you when you got emotional in it, that hit me like, I think I messaged you like right afterwards. I didn't tell you I just saw this video, but you got a message from me like, I can't stop thinking about the conversation we had. And then I went on your social media and again, it started hitting different. And this video had clips of what was happening that night, that your life changed, and actual footage from Iraq, what was going on, and then seeing you as an adult that I would recognize. It showed pictures of you as a kid and an adult that I would recognize. This is the same lady that I talked to in that casino, and seeing you talk and then you getting emotional, and I was like, freaking that hit me. I'm not gonna lie, like I like was like, holy smokes, that actually hit me hard. And I don't know. I'm starting to get a little weird right now. I feel it right now talking about it. But I I did not realize, and you were telling me some of it, but your entire life in Iraq changed essentially that one day. And seeing the videos and the clips of it. And then I started diving in and reading newspapers, articles, and interviews that you have done. And you were telling me, um, some of the things that you're doing now and some of the things that we could get into about what you're going to be doing in the future. But you have not lived the same life as everyone else that's going to be around you. Very few people that you meet are going to be able to relate, and they have no idea. And you said it's a unique experience of being a child of war, is the way you put it. Even that, when I heard it, was difficult to read.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you that video that I posted, that I actually, based on our conversation, that's the reason why it got me to be more inspired. I'm getting a little emotional, to get inspired to post it the day after, or like kind of the same day I was at the airport. Because after that conversation, it just I came to more realization about a lot of things, and um, and we talked about the story when I read into you. So I was like, I should post it and I should just do it. So I didn't do it in like a actually powerlifting platform sense, because actually my story has been uh is actually in the exhibition in Holocaust Museum in 2018 ever since. But I was like, let me just actually post this within, because it is actually one of the biggest reasons for why also it relates to powerlifting. Um, and why it's as I started powerlifting, I think it's just you realize things over time. Um, and yeah, like when I talk about it being a child of war, it kind of sounds surreal in my brain because I don't know where to start. But it is part of my life, of my story, of a lot of children's stories. But being in this uncommon space, it's like it is something that relates to it highly. Yeah.
You were explaining to me how essentially your life, and we don't know over here in North America, our perception of the Middle East in general and Iraq is probably way off. And you were explaining to me how previously your life was pretty normal. When you were your childhood and everything. And I think there was some rising tensions, but when you're young, you don't fully grasp what might be coming. And then that one night, everything changed when the US decided to invade. And it went from being, you're saying you were like a normal kid who would walk to school and there was schooling in the whole night. I mean, I remember asking you questions like, you guys just went to school, you had
Neighbor,
cartoons, and like you were like, yeah, yeah.
we were living a normal life. Uh, I was in elementary school, as I remember from childhood. Um, like as a child, you're just living your childhood. You're just having fun. You have your cousins, your family members. But a lot of the stories in this type of environments, things change within seconds or within minutes. Especially as a child, I don't know what's going on politically. I just know what was leading up to it. All I remember was we were living a normal life, and that one night, I saw on the TV. I was watching TV and I saw a commercial or some kind of. It was not a real like news, and it was showcasing a little girl. Which reminded me of myself because she was in the garden helping out her grandfather, like planting the flowers and plants and stuff like that, which my grandfather and I, who passed away, he used to also do that. And in that TV, it showed an airstrike, and it just the whole house was gone, and I don't remember visually what exactly happened, but it was an explosion. And that same night, that's when the invasion happened. I believe it was in March 2000, yeah, 2003, but it was in March. And being a child, I can't comprehend things, but I do remember a lot of things, like the sounds. A lot of our memories relates maybe to sounds, smell, different senses. So I remember the sounds, I remember the smell, the broken glass, and that was like an ongoing thing. It was not like one night. It was um, just continuous, war and destruction from 2003 until 2009. So it kept on going, like being a normal child to not being able to walk to school normally without hearing gunshots, having car explosions in front of your house all the time, bombings every day, having to sleep in certain corners where you cannot, so you can stay safe if like an explosion happens, and then there's like those sharp nails that go through walls and stuff. Um, you know, I don't want to scare anyone or people who could be triggered by this, but it's just things that could be abnormal. But for us, it became normal because it's like a survival mechanism. You become numb to this kind of environment for you to survive, and otherwise, you just could not survive. Um, but to me, it's like normal because you build that type of like just survival mode. Now I'm
It's
talking about.
no, it's 6 years. You grew up like when you say a child of war, this is legitimately like that's like a childhood. 6 years of this, of hiding in corners from shrapnel coming through, explosions outside, on the way to school, dead bodies, and just gunfights. And that becomes and you're it's not just like a normal where you could be eased though. Like, well, I'm all good. No, you have to be on guard constantly to survive this. Constantly, if you're gonna make it through another day, you got to be careful. You got to have your wits about you. Even like choosing to where you're going to sleep that night, you better be careful where you're sleeping. That's like for a child to be like, this is my reality. Like how many people are going to hear noises and run and huddle into the bathtub or something? But that wouldn't be awe to be like this. These are safe spots if you hear things. But that's years, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, for 6 years of a kid's youth. That is I like the worst parts of America aren't going to get that bad. And how scary it would be for a country like America is invaded and occupied and is fighting. America, you know how scary that would be? The biggest global power in the world has just invaded your country, occupied it, and is fighting your local government in the streets all over the place. There's bombings, and people are dying all the time. I can't even imagine we're I don't know. I don't know. It puts everything into like I can't freaking imagine going through like a week of that, let alone 6 years of your childhood.
Like imagine, let's say you build, for example, you have your family members, your friends, your loved ones in general, and you don't know, like me as a child from my experience, if my father goes to work, you kind of have always that in your mind, like I might not see him today, I might not see him tomorrow, because there's so many people who are surrounding us that lost their loved ones, who thought they're just coming back to get groceries, to get snacks, and they don't come back. So it's like you living under constant, like, just survival, and you just always thinking and all the time, and um it becomes, which is weird because it becomes like normal to us, and you don't realize it until you leave that kind of environment. Like, until I left, and over time I realized there's certain sounds that I just cannot, for if I hear them, I would feel a certain way. For example, I think they're called the emergency sirens,
Mm.
or like like state of emergencies, um, or like even the sound of the fireworks sometimes too. There's like those certain sounds where just sometimes you will still kind of stays with you, but you just have to build like a survival mechanism. And for us, I always say that children understand their environments no matter what age they are. They understand their environments. They might not know what is going on, but they do remember, they do feel what's surrounding them, they do sense it. um, because, as an example, I grew up and I still comprehend a lot of things. This current day, I don't have any belief that war has any solutions, and destruction has no solution for solving any type of problems. Um, and social development, that's why I see a lot of the solutions comes with the sports, or investing in the youth and doing so much things like in the communities that are sustainable. And one of them are definitely powerlifting sports. um, so powerlifting is just something that, it as I like became more into powerlifting, I see it further and further, I see it grow so much more. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast earlier today actually, and one of the guys who was on the podcast was in the military, and he said it's been years, and he still wakes up several times a night and has to check the perimeter of his house, has to clear it. He has to clear it. He he knows it's crazy, but he can't go back to sleep unless he clears the house, because every single time in his position, and he was fighting in the Middle East, you clear the house. And whenever someone got taken it was at night. You enter the house and you take somebody at night and you clear that house. And now he's so worried that someone's going to enter his house. And he clears his own house every freaking night, several times a night, constantly. And he always will. And that is the impact. The war is long over and it's still going to be with him. It's that's why like when I was talking to you, I was like, how, Dina, are you like how are you like you are now? Like thank God you are, but like you were telling me about like what children know you will for the rest of your life remember if you saw your mom or your father with a panic-stricken look on their face. When you look at parents and grown-ups, what's scary as a kid is when your parents or grown-ups are scared. Now, and you will never forget if you see your mom or dad cry or your mom or dad with that look on their face. That is because you always think if they're around, everything's okay. It's a naivety, but it's like a safe thing where that will rob you of that real quick, and you'll realize there is no safety net, and they are just as. Do you have a moment where you realize they are just as scared as me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was actually the first day when just things were off. You can feel like there's some type of energy. I remember um, one of the things that we had to do, which I didn't understand, we had to tape the windows. So when you tape the windows, it takes off from the pressure of explosions and stuff. But unfortunately, it didn't help. So it's like I saw that tape on the windows. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. But some of the windows were so shattered from the whole house. It's like a two big story house. But because of so much pressure, a lot of the glasses were broken that day. The next day, I just cleaned the the glass from the floor. I was helping my mom and my cousins. Um, so it was just like weird things, like dynamic that we're just having to get used to. Um, and it grows to other things like the time that we can go outside. Like I never was able to learn how to ride a bicycle because every time I go in the garden outside, it was an explosion. So I cannot have time to learn how to learn a bike, outside. Um, so like simple things that you would think about that just could be part of your childhood, but you just and I don't want to make it seem to be such a like it was such a horrible because it was. At the same time, it's like simple, fundamental things that are taken away from you that you just don't have access to. You cannot do, and it impacts you in those small ways. You know.
I don't think you can overstate how difficult it was, though. If you're worried about, I don't want to make it seem like it was hell on earth. It was probably pretty bad.
I don't
It
know.
was, I don't think anyone's going to listen to this and be like, oh, what are you complaining about? Like this sounds pretty freaking bad. Um, but were you still going to school at this time?
I remember we took few months off. I don't remember the situation, but like the schools were off for like 5, 7 months around, maybe even 8 months. When I started going back to school, I got used to the sound of the gunshots. So I would get used to basically just opening the door, like, okay, walking. It was like maybe 3 blocks away, but still, like our house was like right in front of where all the things were happening, all the drama. So um, even if I go outside to the door, it's like a risk, or I go across the block, it's a risk. At that time, there was a lot of kidnappings. A lot of my friends used to be kidnapped all the time for, I think they're called ransoms, for where militias and gangs used to make money off of from their parents, the families. Um, so by itself was a risk. So I would just walk casually, gunshots, okay, another day, just go to school.
What? It wouldn't. So you didn't feel scared, you don't think? Or were you
You just block it. You just walk. You just keep going, keep walking.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do you think it's because you were a kid? or were grown-ups like this as well? Or is it just like nonstop and okay, so somebody told me another guy who was in the military, he was like, trying to explain to me there becomes a point where you're super scared, and then there becomes a point where it's lasted too long and you get on the other side of it and you almost accept like we could die and this is it. And you're almost on the other side of it. And it's almost like when you describe the numb feeling or whatever, because I was asking him how you can go in there and start fighting in these wars. And he's like, legit, at a certain point, you're just like, I'm gonna die. Doesn't matter. I'm stuck. I can't get out. I'm gonna die. So you just go ahead and do what you have to do. And it's a weird. I'm like, are you okay with it? Like, it's more like numbness as opposed to like back to normal. It's just, I don't know. He had a hard time describing it as well. So I know what you mean, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
it's very,
It is
sorry, go ahead.
absolutely numbness. Yeah, it is absolutely numbness and also acceptance as well. You're like, you build the strength inside of you, probably without realizing, it's just over time. You're like, I mean, I accept how the situation is right now. That's my environment. I'm just going to keep living. I have no other choice. I have to live. I have to get my education. I have to go to work. I have to go get groceries. I can't stop my life. And you just build that acceptance and you always keep in the back of your head anything could happen. There are environments, I mean, even living in America, there are chances where you can be in a certain situation like this, but over there is like a higher percentage and you just have to live with it and you accept it.
Did you see like straight up fighting in front of you?
I I don't know if I should even say this, be normal to say it. I've had a tank faced at me because they mistook me for someone. Like, uh,
And you were a
I'm not,
kid.
I was like 9 or 10. I was walking with the two bags of like, I'm laughing about it right now. I don't know why, but of like two bags of snacks. I was getting chips and chocolate, whatever. And all of a sudden, the street cleared up, and I think they were looking for someone because I don't know. It was an interesting situation. I was just walking home with my two snacks or bags or whatever, and all of a sudden I see the U.S. military soldiers just facing me with the tank, and I'm like just frozen for I don't remember. It seemed to be a long time, but it was probably a short time. And I'm like, I didn't do anything because they probably mistook me as someone's being used for something, or because that was common during that time. Um, I don't know what happened. I don't know how I even survived. I have no idea. But they mistook me for someone, and I just froze. And then a neighbor called me because they saw me. Like they were like, "Come, like run, run." I mean, even if you run, the situation is even worse. I just don't know how
Yeah.
I survived. I just ran inside that house, and I was just like frozen. I don't even know what to feel. I felt it later, but yeah, that was one. Yeah.
That, I mean, how many people get face to face with a tank like that? But you're right, running might look bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what do you do if you're a kid face to face with a tank and your neighbors are like, run, like
Yeah.
come? But the thing is, if you run into a house and it's a tank, that whole house could be in danger. You be, what do you do? What are you going to do? You're
And
completely,
the street was literally cleared up. I didn't see any cars for some reason. The tank probably was clearing the streets, or I don't know. But it was such a interesting situation. And I saw one car only, which was seemed to be suspect, that was moving very slow. And that's why I got also scared because in danger zones, you get to build this like street smartness. You're like, okay, this car looks a bit very old. There's something going on in this car. They probably think I'm linked to them. I don't know. But it was just,
hmm.
it's just stuff like, as a child, I understood too. But now I'm even talking about it, I'm like, I don't know. Why was I even in that situation?
It's
Yeah.
weird that as a child you could read the play like that. As a child, you would know this car is old, it's moving slowly, there's something wrong here, the street is cleared. Where is everybody? And then boom, this
Yeah.
tank is in front of you. And you're like, uh-oh, I'm in the middle of something. And it's yeah, I mean, these are stories that no one would did you have interactions like with the Americans and what was it like? What was the feeling like between Iraqis like yourself and other people and the American soldiers?
That's a great question because I had two experiences with the American side, um, which I'm thankful because it humanized me. It gave me the humanization of also American soldiers because there are soldiers towards the end. And when I came to America, I came to a bigger realization about the US military and the soldiers themselves. Um, I had an interaction. Most of them was I American shows and everything that we watched on TV. We were very familiar with. For example, like Friends, Hannah Montana. I used to watch it a lot.
What?
Bands like if you're familiar with, or a lot of people familiar with, is like groups like they're called um, what is it called? Backstreet Boys
Oh my
and
God.
all of those.
Sorry, we apologize. So you thought they were terrible people. You're like, what is wrong with these people?
No, that I always had like a mixed the tank situation gave me an impression of there's a lot of individuals who face injustice, of course. At the same time, my interactions with the American soldiers, we used to always have like daily inspections. They used to go each house to inspect the house.
Oh
We're
wow.
a very hospitable community. So my grandma used to always prepare them lunch and have tea with us. So although we don't speak much English, but we welcomed them in their house. They used to play with us like the soldiers. We used to give us candies, chocolates, all these nice things.
Really?
Yeah. So it was kind of like became a friendship too. A lot of the Iraqis, they're just families living their lives. They're just individuals. And we welcome them into our houses like normal interactions. um, I remember like every time they would come to inspect and stuff from different, could be different soldiers, doesn't matter. We always welcome them. Like, hey, have some tea, eat lunch with us, eat dinner with us. So it was very normal. Um, one of the interactions still remember very like dear to my heart is um, when I was in Baghdad, there was this one soldier who was teaching me, I think, karate moves or jujitsu, I don't remember. Like, kind of like just playing around. And I remember, like, I spoke a little English, not much. But then from the interaction, he took out a picture from his pocket. It was a picture of his wife and children. And he just said, like, this is my family. And he became very sad. And I saw like even tear coming out from his eyes. And until today, I still remember this soldier and I always think about him. Um, and I just hope he's okay because I got to see those two sides of no one wins in wars. It's just regular people who are here. And the more that I worked as an activist in the US, I talked to a lot of veterans, a lot of soldiers. Um, Even one soldier that I met here in the US in Houston, actually, he actually used to be in my neighborhood back then, within that area
Holy
too.
smokes.
Yeah. And he still actually goes to therapy and he has big PTSD. He kept apologizing to me. He was very, very like apologetic. Um, so I'm thankful because I got to see all these different sides of it, you know.
I don't know how I would feel like if I if a foreign nation came into my country and was clearing my house daily. I might be like, all right, this is going to be my life and there's nothing I could do about it. So you greet them with coffee and whatever and have lunch with us. But there's going to be some days where you're like, I mean, there are days where you just don't want to have to talk to somebody. And you're like, I'm going to have some alone time today. That's like a normal, and you're out for a walk. Someone's like stopped to talk to you, and you're like, all right, shit, I gotta talk to this guy. But can you imagine? And you can just they're gonna come to your house every day, like it or not, and they're coming in.
Mhm.
And your father and your mother, your experience might even be different than your father and your mother's, who are like, God, I hope everything goes good. Like you might not have totally even known, like, who knows what, I don't know if you talked to your dad about it, about like what he might be thinking. My wife and kid are in here. And some anxiety he might feel sometimes, like, is this guy all right? This guy coming to my door with a machine gun in his hand. I'm going to greet you with coffee, sir. We're not bad. Like, that's scary. That is different. And he probably was doing everything he could to make sure they felt we're not a threat over here. But I don't even know how I feel about it. And I'm glad it worked to an extent to make you alleviated and feel okay. And I'm sure that's what your parents are trying to do as well. To make you feel safe, like everything's okay, everything's okay. When your dad closed the door and he's alone, I'm sure there were times when he was like, fuck, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Or how scared he'd be, like, I just don't want this. It'd be tough. That's crazy to think about. I'm glad everything was okay and you felt the way you did, but putting myself in those shoes, and that's another, I don't know. That's tough. And they were coming in your house whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, they used to come in, uh, but for some reason, like probably I'm sure my interactions or our interactions were thankfully like positive. There are households who face injustice, like based on the history and based on the since 2003 until 2011. So I mean, I'm sure just because my experience was positive doesn't mean all of the citizens were, um, whether they're innocent or not. But most of us are innocent, and that's one misconception too. It's like we, at some point in our lives, we seem to be we're at fault for this, which we're not. We're just regular people living our lives, but it's just politics that always ruins like people in the middle of it, children in the middle of it. Um, and but yeah, like our interaction was good. And like I remember even at some point one time the soldiers came and they needed a translator to interact with my grandfather. So I was like, oh, I can help a little bit because I was listening a lot to Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus. So I just volunteered to translate, a little bit. But it was just like friendly and it was like normal. And a lot of the American soldiers used to interact with the kids, like just, you know, they used to play as their music in the tank, like the rock music, I remember mostly. Um, like a lot of the famous like singers and stuff. So they exposed a lot of that side to the kids and just like maybe the youth as well. Um, it was just playful most of it. Like playing even there's even photographs of them playing football, like soccer with us and stuff, like pictures. Um, so it's like a mix of different stories.
It must have been weird to, because they were occupying your country. So
Yeah.
it must have been, it must have been weird. Like, were they seen as liberators and the good guys then?
Um, no, it's a mix. Like at that time, there was a mix of emotions when, like, during the invasion. Some uh, part of the country, saw it as liberation, but and some others saw it as invasion. I see it as an invasion, even if you're trying like liberation is not invasion. I don't think it equates to it. So when you're going there to solve an issue with a leader, a political leader, or whoever it is, do not invade, do not go into someone's country and hurt its citizens that have nothing to do with it, um, because it's just never the answer to things. And a lot of I mean, being a child or being a regular individual in that country, I didn't see it as liberation because you shouldn't liberate that way. If you think it's liberation, you could solve it another way, you know? But the way it was done, it turns out towards toward the end of time, it's done for other reasons. Um, Weapons of mass destruction that were never found, etc. And it showed through history. Um, and we see the lives of the American soldiers who were hurt and who were impacted, and their families been impacted, and we see the Iraqi citizens who also families torn apart and they lost their loved ones, and just futures who are basically just became at risk for we became refugees, not in our hands. We had to become refugees because it became so dangerous. We had to leave our homes, leave bittersweet memories there. Although it was like painful and bitter memories, also it was very sweet and very nice, warm place that I still even have inside. And that's why even as an athlete right now, I still see so much that I could do back there, because the country has changed so much in positive way, um, even with so much destruction that has happened, which everything happens for a reason. Um, but it's definitely has shifted so much, and I see there's so much potential. Um, we talked about bad things earlier when they happen, but I still have a belief that yes, things happen for a reason.
Well, like Iraq has such a amazing history in terms of like I mean one of the most ancient of civilizations they trace back there. Like that historically speaking, it's like it was a Mecca, Baghdad, all throughout history, the Sumerians, like you could go back and it's crazy. Like I could see where like you're born there, grew up there, and it's to leave there, even if at the time it was war stricken, it's still home and everything it represents for you. And historically, what it is, period to humanity. I mean, literally one of the first civilizations would have been there, if not the. It's crazy, all there. So to leave there, yeah, it's not easy. It's still, even if you leave as a refugee, it'd be hard to explain to someone who's like, you must have been grateful to leave. It's like, yeah, but it's my home.
Mhm.
And what was it like to be there in the middle of a war-torn place and see a show like Friends, where you see what the other side of the world is living like? And they have, on that sitcom, they would have dilemmas, but they were such trivial dilemmas compared to what you described, where like when my dad goes to work, I don't know if I'm going to see him that night because how many kids at your school show up and be like, did you hear about so and so? Her dad didn't come home last night. And that would not be weird for you to hear. Or did you hear about so and so, her brother, her older brother? He's gone now. And those wouldn't be weird things for you to hear or even see. But you were saying, I read your article that you were in the interview, seeing bodies as a child. And to view like a show like Friends and be like, this is how some people are living right now. Like we think we watch Instagram and get jealous how some people live. You would be like, whatever small little dilemma on like Seinfeld and Friends they were dealing with, you're like, that is how the other side of the world lives and what they worry about. That's the worst they got to worry about. Where all go to sleep at night and like, I don't know, what did it feel like when you were there and you were seeing like how other parts of the world live? How did you think as a child? Be like, could you just not even wrap your head around it, or
It felt like it's like a surreal place. Like when I was a big fan of Miley Cyrus back then, and when I used to watch Hannah Montana as like a teenager, because I stayed in Iraq until middle school, so I basically grew until middle school time. Um, so I understood better. So when I watch shows like this, I'm just thinking like, wow, that must be so nice. Like you're like in this really amazing school. You have like uh this, how it is like in the shows, although it's also a little bit unrealistic here because like
hmm,
when you move here it's like also a culture shock, but it still seemed so fascinating. And um it also would seem to be also inspiring because it inspired me to learn English. I used to just learn the language through like TV shows, through music, and you get to find ways to be creative and just be like in this like little box that you make for yourself of like dreams, hopes, and especially like as a young person. Um, and I remember I used to just entertain myself by watching shows like this or singing the songs and watching the cartoons and singing them, just um, it gave inspiration, a little bit also of hope as well. Um, Maybe just how each person views it differently, but personally, it gave me this vision like there's a better world out there. Maybe someday I could live this life, or maybe someday I can be like this or be in that kind of environment. Um, and so it makes you just know and realize there's better environment than where I'm living in. And yeah, yeah.
Was it like some escapism as well?
It could have been, yes, because you just have to survive. Um, you just have to find ways to like be in your little imagination. So music, arts, that's what I used to do all the time, just art, music, drawing, writing, learning the language, like English, um, watching the TV shows. Like I even had albums of that. Yeah, one of the groups was called Westlife, and there's a singer, her name is Dido, Britney Spears, of course, and the Blue, yeah, Blue and Backstreet Boys. Yeah, and then Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus. Those were
It's
like this.
it's so I mean it it's it's funny in a way that like wherever you are, music, art, and all that is still going to be taken in and appreciated and has value and takes you to places.
Mhm.
Like that is it's one of the things as humans we have. We can give each other hope, we can give each other inspiration. Very different. Like you see that in all other animals in the world. They can't give hope and inspiration like that to someone on the other side of the world like we can. Where you write a blog, you do a video, you put out a song, and it could literally give someone on the other side of the world what they need, exactly what they need when they need it. Like this is all I got right now. When I sit down on Sunday for that half hour, watch your show, Hannah Montana, like that's all I got. Because when that show turns off and I go outside, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to hear explosions. There's bullets. I don't know what I'm going to see. But when I'm sitting there, I have that. That's mine. And there's place like that out there where there's going to be a girl singing and living a normal life. Like that's actually tough for me to think about right now because that's happening right now.
Yeah, it's
There,
happening right now. There's someone who is maybe even like watching you from across the world, watching your podcast, who's maybe a powerlifter or an athlete, and they see the platforms of other powerlifters and athletes, and they see it as inspiration, they see it as something that they want to do, and they there's someone who's what you're making an impact without you realizing you're making an impact. They not might even be able to reach out to you, but you are making a big impact. It could be through a song, through sport, through whatever you're doing, you know.
do you think about that? Well, first off, before we get to what you're doing now, so you had that relationship with the American troops. What was it like with the Iraqi? With the Americans coming into your neighborhood, what because there was fighting and there's people being killed, and what was the relationship on with the Iraqis? Because it's a very difficult thing to think about, where you know you're being invaded. The fighting wouldn't be there if they didn't invade you. You had a life before that, and you know what it is now. Yeah, how was that?
Politically speaking, because there was so much division and the citizens wanted, of course, to get out of and leave the dictatorship, which it was a dictatorship. I personally do not view this individual as a leader who actually, for example, really helped the country be the best condition. But no matter what, we should not interfere with other countries' politics, especially the way that has been done. So the country has divisions on their reactions. Some people, there's this picture is even photographed in history, and it's online, where the Iraqi citizens cheered, very happy, like, oh, liberation, liberation, gonna be liberated. They took down the temple, was it the statue of Saddam Hussein, with the rope. I think the picture is there. So it had different reactions. The other reactions was just, we're regular people, we are fearful, we don't know what's going to happen, we're just going to sit in our homes and wait. We don't know. This is not a good thing that's happening right now. Um, and there's people who are against it. Whoever was against it, I'm not sure what their interests were, but there's just different opinions. But the moral of the story, if you speak to multiple Iraqis, a lot of Iraqis, they will tell you that they lost a loved one. They have lost someone in their family because of this war, because their homes were destroyed by an airstrike. Um, One of their loved ones who became disabled, until this day, they lost their legs, they lost their, part of their body, or, there's just so many stories. Um, so the reactions were just so different, but the end result is that it's just destruction. And whatever that liberation was, it was not liberation, because whoever was put in power later, that year, 2004, I think, um, did not serve the Iraqi citizens and the country when it comes to economy, education, fundamentals of everyday, rights of the citizens. And it became even more dangerous. I remember the most dangerous years, it was not even 2003. It was from 2004, 5, 2007 became really dangerous. 2008 kind of slowed down, but those years were just the aftermath. It made it even worse. And that's why when I spoke to a lot of American soldiers, they say, I don't know why we were here. It's just like we thought we were here for something and we leave. But then they ended up staying for all this long. Um, and so it's just a lot of like unplanning, lack of strategy, and just destruction for no reason.
And when you guys, how was it that you guys ended up leaving? How did that come about?
So in 2008, we applied. There was a program within refugee resettlement. It's called the SIV program, Special Immigrant Visa Program. Is granted for Iraqis and also Afghans who, if you're Iraqi or Afghan citizen who works, let's say you're an engineer and you have a contract with an oil and gas company who's American company, in your country, because you work directly with Americans, with an American company, um, you have the opportunity to apply for the special immigrant visa within a refugee program. So it falls under a refugee. You are a refugee, um, and the application took about a year or so. Some people wait longer. Some people wait 20 years. Some people wait 5 years. You don't know. So it's based on when the embassy goes and interviews you. And thankfully, ours done within a year. We went to the embassy, did all the vetting process, and you wait and you're ready to travel. You become a refugee.
Did you think when all this was happening, were you thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to the land of Hannah Montana," or were you
Yes,
thinking, "Really,
yes.
really, what were you?"
Actually, I had a dream that same night that I met Hannah Montana in
Oh
my
my God, boy, were you in for a surprise? Well, you met Russell Orhe. Well, second, but no kid, how cute is that? By the way, you had a dream. You met. You thought when I get to America, the Backstreet Boys are going to greet me at the airport. It's, it's my
Yeah,
goodness.
where I had a dream. It was like the whole crew of like it's just kind of funny because that show made an impact for so many kids in the in the country because we were watching it a lot. I it was like a dream. Like I still remember it to this day because usually dreams you forget about them. It's like visually I remember just hanging out. I wasn't in California, which we were not going to California, but we were just in California, met them somewhere, and it was like all their friends and just everything. And they were like my friends.
You're, you're like, I still have that dream sometimes, and I'm hanging on to it. And if I ever meet Miley Cyrus,
Yeah,
but when you actually got to America, I mean, my goodness, what? Well, how much? So initially, you had a normal life, then living in the conditions you lived in. How different? Like, how much of a culture shock was that? And confliction, where, like, the irony, America invaded your country, and it was all-out war, and then you're living in America, and your life could not be more different than what you were like on a dime right off the bat. Like, how was that change, and how did that feel? And
it's like you mentioned the keyword culture shock. It's change of environments, different language, different culture. You're like moving. Let's say you are like you're from the US. You're like, oh, let me go to a trip to Japan. You've never been there. And you're like the things that you think about. Okay, what grocery store can I go to? What school can I go to? Where do I apply for work? You're starting your life all over again in a whole new land. You have no idea what you're doing or where you are. You need to make new friends. You need to build a new community for yourself. And that was the process that we went through. And it based also on the age range that you are, of course. Like, let's say you're in your 20s or you're below your 20s, you go to college or to high school. I went to high school and I had to learn the language more. I thought I knew English, but American English is different. Americans talk very fast. And when I'm in the class, I'm just confused. Like, can you please slow down? Like in my head, I'm like to the teacher, just like, I need to pay attention, but I can't because she's speaking very fast. So the whole system, surprisingly, something about the education here, I found the education system here, the schools are so easy. I'm like, for example, exams, um, do you guys have multiple choice? We don't have multiple choice in our exams. You have to study for during the school year in Iraq or Middle East, most of us, you have two exams each year, every year, every school year. One is kind of like the midterm exam, or it's like a whole 6 months exam of what you study of a book or a subject, and then you have a final exam for you to order to graduate to the next level. So you have to study for this exam, and you have to answer questions by actually writing down the answers and showcasing your work. I had to memorize the whole book sometimes, even like history, geography, math, to the point where I know what page number is that content in. So I would just be like a memorization, just yeah. Um, this the system here was just so easy. I thought one thing I that happened I didn't know. My grades were impacted in the U.S. for some reason. I think just because of the shock. Although I was always a good student in Iraq, when I came to the US, I didn't have good grades. Um, it was just my whole performance just went down. I think just because of the adjustment to the system, and I did not graduate with a good GPA. I didn't know what GPAs are. I didn't know what SATs are, and I needed like a support system within the school system, which was not there as a newcomer. Um, So things like that, a lot of students go through, but there was no resources for.
There are people whom they talk about, when my parents got divorced, I had a tough 2 years in school. You came from Iraq in a war-torn country to the other side of the world. Like, there's no doubt you were gonna have this is no mystery. You were thrown in. It's crazy. Look, you graduated good enough. I can't. Hats off to you. Yes, a support system. Holy smokes. I can't, you probably had PTSD, didn't know it. You could use so much support, like a support worker. And you were an Iraqi, okay, listen, I'm losing it here, but let me gather myself. High school is tough for every kid who's a teenager. High school is, high school is culture shock for every kid leaving middle school, going into high school. And so many kids are just trying to find themselves, find new friends. How do they fit in? Going through like puberty and all the rest of it. High school is such a weird time period. That age is such a weird time period for humans, period, right? Can you like everyone listening try to think about being an Arab Muslim girl from Iraq dropped into US and all your classmates are like, there's a new Iraq girl here, an Iraqi girl here who's Muslim and everything around the sentiment of the time. Keep in mind what you probably dealt with the sentiment of the time period as well, with Muslims and Iraqi and the whole nine. And they dropped you in that in America with no support workers, counselors, or anything, and your grades dipped. I bet they dipped. I bet the whole thing was like, holy smokes. And you don't have friends yet, and you're trying to, you know, it's tough if you're American. Playing Jesus, man. If I was there, I'd be like, somebody give that girl a hug. All right. And sit her down till everything's gonna be okay and help her with her homework. Like you can't even keep pace with it's a different language. When I was in school, as a French immersion up until high school, and because I'm Canadian, so French is the second language, I dropped out of French immersion, went to English because I was like, man, I can't learn math and science in French. And it was immersion, so it all was. I was like, I'm having too tough a time, and these are tough concepts. I need to learn in the language that I'm used to. Thank you. It's just going to be easier for me. And then cool, go on, university, whatever. I can't imagine being you. And there's no help with that. It's just figure it out. Dina, yeah, your grades dip. It's not you. You got dropped in the worst case scenario. God bless you came out of this and ended up the person you are. You have been checked in life. You got the heart of a lion, kid. Let me tell you, for you to survive everything you've been through, and then it's crazy. It's crazy. And you don't have like a victim mentality at all. You're like, yeah, I don't know why. I mean, my grades dipped a little and I'm like, holy shit. No kidding.
I just go in life, don't realize what happened. Just go. Things happen.
It's it's like how was high school as an Arab Muslim from Iraq in the middle of that time period?
Mm. That's a great question. How it was, you mentioned something about coming to America around that time. It was 2009. So 2009 was very early, like the whole mindset and everything was just media has like the coverage really impacted the people who live in the US. Um, I don't know how they exactly thought because there's Muslims and Arabs who lived before me in America, so they faced, they know exactly how the things that they have faced. For example, in the airports, how they look like, going outside, things like that. For me personally, I have that guilt when I would say that I'm from Iraq. Maybe it was just like within me. I'm not sure why, but I was scared if someone asked me where I'm from to say that I'm from Iraq or I'm Arab or I'm Muslim. So I always had that in the back of my mind, like it to the point where I was kind of just I would ignore talking about it. Um, but I think over the years, maybe after a year and a half, um, thankfully our school was diverse, so we had a lot of like Latino students, we had Black students, we had some Arab students, and thankfully more refugees also came to my school. So it was a very diverse school. Um, so got more comfortable around. So I never thankfully faced like any type of like, bad interaction. Um, but it was just more like uncomfortness and trying to adjust to the environment because of like how the media showcased us as if like it was our fault for being here or for this whole situation. Um, but thankfully, over the years, now we see it like America has everyone, and wars create refugees. It's not like we just decide, oh, let's become refugees. No, it's
Mm.
you created us. I'm sorry, like I'm here because of what happened. There's nowhere else to go, and you have the system, you have the funding for you to welcome us and start a different life, which I'm thankful for. I'm thankful to be in the US and to have be in this environment. At the same time, we should just face the truth. This has been created.
Since being in America, so you have been an activist and you've been working. And so, what are some of the things that you've been doing?
It's since 2017, I started working with refugees in refugee resettlements, like nonprofit organizations. So my background for the past 7 years has been as a humanitarian, um, working with refugees, immigrants, and programming. Uh, when I started working with refugees, it was just like when we were welcomed, I welcomed the new refugees. So it was kind of this backwards. Like I became the person who welcomed them, um, helping them adjust to the US, supporting them with the programs that we have. For example, helping the kids' registration to schools and um, helping the parents navigate and giving them the resource to find a new job and adjust to the US. Um, just become a welcomer, basically. Um, then the really exciting part, 4 years later, I started working with refugee youth. So when I was a student as a refugee, I needed that support in the school system. So I became a teacher who worked with the refugee youth who are in the school system. And we were able to bridge the refugee children, the refugee and immigrant children, the parents, immigrant, refugee parents, and the school system, the administrators. So that has never done before. We were able to support the parents. Like, let's say if they received a letter from the school, like, this is what's going on with the child. You need to do this. So we were able to help them communicate. The challenges that the youth went in the school system, we were able to support them with, help them adjust. Um, a lot of the issues that they and the challenges they face in the school, I also faced, and I saw it through them. And they're just the sweetest kids. I had kids from Ethiopia, Eritrea, Afghanistan, Congo, Ghana, like from, yeah, literally from all over the world. And that was like one of the parts of the journey, the school system. And later on became involved also policy and advocacy. That's when it's basically advocating to the administration, to Congress, being that person who, was in that experience, um, and just being a voice. Um, I wouldn't say I'm like, there's a concept of you're like being voice of someone else's voice, but it was more like transferring the current situation, the experience, and advocating for the solutions. And a lot of just diversity of activism when it comes to Iraq, interacting with the veterans themselves, working with the veterans. The veterans actually now work with the refugees. They are interacting with refugees and supporting us with the organizations. Um, so it's just been such a amazing, eye-opening experience.
You became, and this happens often, you become the person you needed when you needed that person and didn't have it. We do this in life. We often know, like, I'm going to become the person that younger me needed, and I'm going to be that person for someone else who needs it. That's what you became for those kids.
Wow. Yeah. The one of the amazing things I still remember is it's now you saying that it's just now I kind of realize it, which I didn't realize. Um, in the story that I when I posted this reel of that one day everything changed, that one night when I worked in that program with the children, the story was highlighted in the Holocaust Museum, and the Holocaust Museum is literally a place where everyone, tourists, everyone goes there to learn, and it basically became a story of human rights defenders in the museum. So it's crazy how life works. I never imagined myself to be in this place ever.
Tell me
Never.
about that, about the Holocaust Museum.
Yeah.
What happened there?
The Holocaust Museum, because of how successful the program became within the school system, we were highlighted. Oh, I'm just more humble. I just don't like to say, but my story was highlighted as an Iraqi girl who survived war and started working with the refugee kids. It became a whole documentary. So some of those clips that I added to the video itself on Instagram of the war and everything is from that story itself within the documentary. So this documentary, the story was highlighted and is currently even until today. If you visit Holocaust Museum in Houston, you go to the human rights section, you will find the story
That's
there.
freaking incredible. Do you have a link to it I could watch?
There's no link. You have to go in person. I actually went in person and filmed it.
Oh man, well give me the bootleg version you have on your phone.
Sure.
It's not as bad because I'm getting it from you, so it's not bootlegging necessarily. You bootlegged your own story, but
Actually, it
I'll
was
watch it.
weird because I was just standing there. People were like, "Who's that? Like, who is she?"
And then they're probably like, they're watching the movie and then they're watching you bootlegging it, and someone's gonna say something to you like, "Hey, show some respect." Okay, show some respect because that lady on that, and then they look at your face like, "Holy shit, it's her." This is a
Actually,
bizarre.
actually, someone there was a lady who worked there. She thought I was just someone who's filming because you're not allowed to film or something. I didn't know.
Sure.
Why
Yeah.
don't film or something? I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, but it's mine. And I don't have access to it."
It's so crazy. You don't got access and it's yours. The lady's like, all right, fuck it, film it. I don't know. Do whatever you're gonna do with it.
We
Because
just
it's
moved
awkward.
on. It was funny.
But yeah, so I first off, yeah, I gotta see this film. And you were telling me as well, due to some of the things you're doing, is there places you can't go? You're on a list that you couldn't go somewhere or something like that?
Oh, so because of my activism, 2018, there was a big uh, uprising in Iraq. It's a youth peaceful uprising because of the human rights violations and the lack of fundamental human rights. So as an activist here, I was able to use my platform and be due to lack of resources and information in the country. A lot of the, let's say, resources in the country, like the government officials, they were basically blocking access to the internet. They were blocking access to certain platforms. So we were basically amplifying their messaging, and I became one of the sources where I amplified their messaging and on the Instagram platform. Um, and because of that, there was a lot of militias who were just targeting certain individuals. And one time on Twitter, I saw my name, of course, like one of those names that were like on the list, like danger list of like cannot. They're basically targeted list. Targeted list. It's kind of crazy talking about it on the podcast. It's
This
like
is, yeah,
someone
no, this is crazy.
misunderstand it or something. But it's basically just became on a targeted list of if I go to the airport, if I go somewhere, I'll be targeted. I can't, move because they were targeting activists, journalists, any free media, any person who was, speaking up, basically.
And what was happening? Because didn't what was happening around this time? Did somebody get killed? And there was protests around it. My memory is foggy on some of this because we had a conversation about it as well. And you were explaining to me you were linked to some of this.
Yeah. So the situation was in the US, the way the media highlighted it was so different from the actual realistic situation. The protesters who came out peacefully, they were just demanding their rights as young as 11 years old, who were even actually were targeted by snipers as young as 11. They're just kids who don't go to school or go to school. They just are there for good reasons. Because majority of Iraq population, that's something to clarify, is a young population. Their ages are like from 20 to young 30s. It's a very young country, born in the 90s and early 2000s. Um, so the actual reality of the situation, they started protesting. Um, then, of course, the government and officials who are, I would say, in the corrupted officials, they face them like with aggression, with violence to shut them down. On the US, there was some other things happening. They took it as an opportunity to target a militia leader who is in Iran. His name is Qasem Soleimani. And Qasem Soleimani was targeted in his car. That was during the Trump administration, and
I remember that. Yeah.
he was killed. Um, it was such a big chaos because on one side, the citizens, the Iraqi citizens, they're like, please hear us. We're here. We need help. And you're just making the situation different. We don't want war. You're having to fight this guy, and we're going to be in the middle of this because Iraq is in this target where we're like in the middle. Iran is here, and then the US is there. So it's chaos surrounded by us. And they're just out there for peaceful reasons. But politics came in the middle and chaos happened.
And what were they protesting? What was the acts that they were protesting against?
They were protesting for since the invasion, because we talked about liberation. There was no liberation because no improvement, and all the promises were not given since 2003 based on that liberation. So the government that took over in 2003 in leadership who took office in 2003, they did not represent the interest of the Iraqi citizens. So they were basically stealing the money and the resources of the country more than. I remember living there without electricity for days, no water. It was normal, just we had to depend without electricity. So that day when they came out, 2018, because they're such a young population, they have access to social media. They're seeing how the world lives. They're like, we deserve better than this. We are a young population. Those people in office do not represent us. And we are a rich country, but where's the money going? It's just oil money. And we want quality of education. We want jobs because many of us are university graduates, cannot have, economic stability. Um, we want quality of life, freedom of speech, journalists, academics, activists, anyone who speaks up and shows real information, they get targeted. And that was the aftermath. So that's what they were out for their fundamental rights, human everyday rights, future.
And And when you spoke up and gave a platform, you got put on a list and seen your name on a list on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah, basically. It's
That's pretty crazy. I don't know what I think about to be like, oh my gosh.
when you're an activist or a journalist in certain countries, and it's just you become basically sometimes a target. And it's just, I don't know, it could, but most of them are militias, most of them are just, groups. But in general, if I think about Iraq now, it's in way better condition because the leadership, thankfully, that's put in place now, it's just at a better place than ever before, um, especially in the recent years, like this year, I would say. I wouldn't say it's perfect because no place is perfect, but Baghdad is at safest it's ever been. There's no problems at all as far as safety issues at all.
Have you gone back to Iraq?
I'm planning to, for sure. I want to go.
Will this be the first time since you left as a refugee?
Last time was 2015, but 2015 wasn't the best either. Um, it's been a long time. Yeah, it's been 7 years, 8 years. Yeah,
We're getting close to 10 years.
yeah, it's been a long time.
It must be. Well, first off, would you be safe? Are you still on anybody's list?
Oh, no, no, we're good. I, honestly, even if I'll be fine. It's fine.
God, Dina. Even if I, even if I am, it's all good. Relax, Ryan. It would you you got heart. Let me give you that. You're brave.
I have no fear. Nothing stops me because I know one thing is that I don't need any bodyguards, anything. Like God has my back. So I don't need I will obviously be logical and, be smart about it, but I'm not scared. I mean, nothing I don't think it's a issue, yeah.
So when you, what do you plan on doing when you go back? Would you do some work when you get there, or
So many things, so many things. The way that Iraq has developed, especially around now, it's so much different. There's people from all over the world who are actually visiting now. It became a tourist spot, actually. Yeah, people from France, from the US, and you would be surprised, but Iraqis want people to come visit them because, and they, to the point where if you like want to pay for your food, let's say, they say, no, on me, you're not paying anything. We are so happy to have you here. And they want to show their true selves. And my plan when I visit Iraq and Baghdad again is to, first of all, as far as powerlifting, I have so much plans and goals within powerlifting as being an athlete. Um, Projects that I just want to do. I want to showcase the current country, especially within social media, since the platform is growing, um, and just show the heart of us because that's the real us. And yeah, that's us.
in Iraq, do what is women in sports like? I remember asking you a lot of questions about this because we often in North America mix like just Middle East. It gets all jumbled up and we don't know exactly in terms of women's rights. It's obviously different in every nation. It's not all the same. But I was asking you, like, okay, so what is acceptable? What isn't acceptable in terms of women's rights? Where is it at in Iraq? And how would they feel about a woman in sport like you in a strength sport like that?
That's a great question. It's different reactions. For example, in the US, I'll give it an example. You see some comments section, oh, she's manly. Like strength sports is only for men. Like, why are you doing that? Why you look like a man? Or, it's kind of similar reactions there a little bit. Plus, sometimes there are more like, let's say, protective or conservative families who are, let's say, afraid for their daughters or their family members to be in the sport because they don't know what the sport is. or maybe some communities could view it as like something unacceptable based on traditions and environment and culture. Um, but there are, thankfully, many women who are actually involved in sports, like Olympic weightlifting, football, which is soccer. We could here it's called football, basketball, tennis, all types of sports. Powerlifting, there's yet room to grow. There is a IPF team for the men, but there's no IPF team for the women because of some internal politics that they don't want to enforce, create a woman, or I think there's no interest or enough tools for them to grow in the sports as like the men do. Um, Also, a little bit of I don't know if I can mention here, but a little bit of doping um
You
situations
say
too.
whatever you say
Yeah.
whatever you want. Don't worry about
So
that.
there is no there's no, let's say, transparency. There's no, it needs to basically, it needs a structure. It needs a strong structure. It needs a foundation where the sport to be established there because the talents are there. I get messages all the time. I want to try the sport, and how do I do powerlifting? And I have even friends, women in Iraq, or my girlfriends who are powerlifters. They're so passionate about the sport, um, but there's just lack of resources, or there's no like real structure for the sport there.
What about women in power positions over there? Is
Oh,
there any? Is it not? Is
it's
there?
a lot, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Usually, if you meet any Iraqi woman, she'll tell you, I run the household, like 100%,
I mean,
1000%.
I mean in like companies, government.
Oh, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
okay, okay.
Everywhere. Governments, businesses, and because one thing about us, we are raised to, number one, especially as women and girls, get your education. Your education is your number one thing. This is your tool for success. So all of us are raised to get our education and do well in school, um, and with the standard of you have to show who our family are. You know, you have to. They say like raise your head, raise our heads or something like for good honor, like you know. Um, so they are raised that way with that standard, and so they go beyond to succeed in everything they do.
Think it'd be cool um if you could get powerlifting going even more over there, and your story will definitely help for that. Would you, because you lift in the American Federation, would you be involved with the Iraqi Federation, or how would that work, do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's the only because the only that's a great question. I always think about it. And the only thing, let's say, if I am to be involved in an Iraqi team, they're not going to give me the support. I don't think so, unless they're willing to give that support to an athlete and other athletes. But I'm so thankful. I didn't make it yet to the USA team within Powerlifting America. But once I do, I think there's still room to showcase who we are because I love the Powerlifting America Federation, what has been doing. Um, and I think it took the sport to a whole new level, different level, what we're seeing right now. And it could be, I don't know. They're gonna have to fight for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is it's interesting because
Yeah.
you can yeah, I ponder it. If you more eyes would be on you as as like if you were a member of the American, I mean, there's so many different teams you can be involved in, from the bench press only to the three lift to whatever. Like there's so many different, like the North American Championship to whatever, right? But then also, um, imagine being a member of the first world's team for an Iraqi woman. And if the Iraqi women are going to have their first national team go to worlds, by the way, you could do a documentary on that. And it's someone like you leading the charge, a child of war who is leading the charge in the first Iraqi women's world's team and everything that you are, who you are, would be extremely special. And yeah, I don't, you could do a freaking Netflix documentary on that and your return to Iraq and rallying, these women and the impact you might have, um, would be extremely special. Yeah, but it's complicated and I don't know how all that works, but even if you didn't lift on that team, if you were a coach, if you were, some attached to that team somehow, but I would absolutely love for you to lift on it too. Like imagine your worlds, you come full circle. You were in Iraq, you left as a refugee and return as a leader in your community and lead these women to the world stage for the world to see. And now you have an even bigger voice. Would be freaking amazing. And imagine the rounds then doing podcasts and whatnot, being the first Iraqi women's team ever to go to the worlds. And you think of that. Um, that'd be amazing. Talk about a turn of events. You return like that. But, you know, there's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of things, and so I don't know. And I don't want to lose you from Powerlifting America either, because I go do commentary there and whatever. Love to see you again. Doesn't mean you will see everybody again, but it's something to consider, isn't it? Because that's quite the story that I just laid out there, if you think about it.
Never thought about this ever, ever. Yeah. And you're just making more sense now.
It's this happens a lot on the podcast. I start pitching people ideas, but it's true. That would be absolutely amazing. Like I would like your life story, if you were to do that and tell your story from the beginning, normal, then the war happens and everything that happened during that, then leaving America invaded and you leave to America, dropped into high school, and then leaving high school, becoming an activist, everything from being put on lists with militias to all the activism doing to returning to Iraq and being on that team and getting on the world stage and you're the captain, you're handling, you're lifting the whole nine. That's a sports story that when people watch it, when you hit that platform at the world stage and everyone knows your story, it doesn't matter what you lift, what placing you get, you already won. And the world now will have to hear your story. And all of these, everybody who's gone through conflicts, refugees, and all of that are going to see you and know what you represent. You'll represent Iraq, but you'll represent far more than that when you hit the platform on the world stage. And that would be a beautiful, beautiful connection between sport and everything you've been through. If there's, you know, but I mean, in all the lives you would change by giving these women an avenue, being be strong with me. Be strong with me. I'll lead the charge. I'll help put it together. Oh, Nelly. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it truly, everything that you have said, it's like I'm coming to a more realization, uh, because I just, when you start doing something and because you're so passionate about it, you do have curiosity, you have a vision. And it all started with curiosity, but it grew into something even bigger. And to the point that now we're talking about it. And even on this platform, I used to watch King of the Lifts like platform and just like, oh wow, I wish I had to be here one day. It's just like maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. Maybe I just like, oh, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 6 years. But then when you get to put yourself in uncomfortable places, you get to also be in conversations where you're saying uncomfortable things. For example, it's not easy for me to showcase all the things that have happened and been through because it's, I mean, yes, it's a story at the same time. You're basically telling the whole world about it. But it means so much bigger things. That's the reason why I'm even talking about it, because of everything you mentioned now, and how it can impact so much, and we can create like a whole different movement and solution, and just opportunities for girls and women to compete and be strong. Because through powerlifting, when I started, it started with curiosity. So when a girl messages me curious about it, I know, for example, for sure she has potential, just because she wants to do it and the will to continue doing it. Um, and being in powerlifting, I always tell them, like, it's more than just strength of your body strength. It's mental. I also learned it a lot from Leah, because Leah inspired me a lot. It's mental, emotional, like face your fears. Even if you're scared, it's okay to be scared. Um, if you are having anxiety, it's okay to have anxiety. And this sport has taught me so much. And I know with what they have been through in their environment, this is a great opportunity to make new opportunities, and just basically, yeah, open a world for like a sport that's so inspiring. And I do see it as to be such a good sport, powerlifting. Um, yeah, and there are the individuals, there's just lack of tools, lack of opportunities. So we can make it. We can make the opportunities.
We, I'm, I relatively recently was at the Western National Championships or Western Canadian Championships, and a young man came up to me and was like, Ryan, like, you want to get a pic, whatever. Okay, let's get a picture. And he's like, listen, as we got a little close, his name's Max Hall. And he's like, you, your podcast saved my life. And I just kind of smiled and I thought he was exaggerating. And he said, serious. I listened to Leah Babwa when she first went on your show, and she talked about how she didn't know she was autistic. Her family didn't know she was autistic, and she's enough on the spectrum towards like it isn't readily you can't tell. I've spent so much time like I've with Leah on podcasting and like what at Worlds and whatever. Like she's visited Canada and I've been to France. So you spend time with this individual and you forget. You really do. It's not apparent. And so for her growing up, she didn't know, and people, her own family didn't know. But being autistic, there's so much that goes with it. It's not your brain is not operating the same. And if she had outbursts or act up or breakdowns or whatever, it would just be, why are you like this? Why are you being difficult? And she wasn't being difficult. And when your own family doesn't understand you and you don't understand yourself, and you're on the brink of suicide, depression, anxiety is so high, and you don't know what's triggering these meltdowns. You don't know, and you're just like, please let me, God, not have a freaking meltdown. Well, who could actually ever be with me and love me for me? I am a weirdo. I'm all these things. You beat yourself up. And when she found out she was autistic, um, everything changed. Now she knows, okay, and autistic people, you start reading about it. This might be a trigger, that might be a trigger. Deal with this, deal with different coping mechanisms, whatever. Now you could deal with it. And this guy said he didn't know until he literally was listening to the podcast and heard Leah Babwa telling his story. And he said, oh my God, that's me. And he was on the brink this close. He said he was like, I don't deserve to be here. Who could love me? You start saying all the things that Leah said to herself. I, you know, my own family, nobody gets me. Everyone looks at me like, what's wrong with you? Why do you do this? Why do you outburst? And they just think you're being difficult or whatever. And you're like, imagine how that feel, and you just get in if because it's this way your whole life. So by the time you're an adult, it's conditioned into you. I'm a freak. You start beating yourself up. Be like, you meet somebody and you think they like you, but you're telling yourself in the back of the head when you get to know them, I'm gonna end up pushing you away. And then when you realize, oh, I'm fine. I'm autistic. There's ways I could deal with this. And other people are dealing with it and thriving. And Leah Baba is Leah Baba. And now look at Leah Baba. No, Leah Baba thought, who could ever love me? Who would ever want to be like me? Who would ever? And Leah Baba now has girls all over the world who are like, you're an inspiration to me. Imagine young Leah found that out. Stick around, kid. You're going to be an inspiration. Ladies and men, people are going to look at you and you're going to be an inspirational world champion and everything. And then this guy listening to that podcast is like, holy fuck, changed everything, you know? And there's same deal. Some girl, someplace is in hell right now, and she's watching that Hannah Montana or whatever in a place that resembles nothing like where we are right now. And when you hit that platform and you do your thing on whatever platform it is, if any of this stuff comes about, you imagine the impact when they find out your story. And it's like you were in a position, you know, in the way everything has worked out for you in your life. It's it's the wildest. But your series of events, from everybody you met to ending up in Houston of all places to everything has brought you right here, right now to this conversation. And we're having it. I don't know
Unbelievable.
what you're gonna do next, but I'm glad we met. Hey, I'm super duper thankful you told me your story and everything. And I mean, it's only the beginning. You told me that in the DMs, and you were like, it's only the beginning, Ryan. And then I told you when I found out about your story, I'm like, I gotta have you on the podcast. And you're like, already? And I'm like, Dina, trust me, this is more than I know. I see the bigger picture. And it's like, got you. You could always, everyone's like, wait till I hit these numbers. It's not about the numbers. Trust me.
Well, it's
It's
never.
not about the numbers. It's bigger than that. We're so far beyond any of that. But I'm so grateful that fuck, I'm so glad I didn't get my laptop from that restaurant.
We would never have talked about.
Uh,
Oh, it's, I don't know, especially being an introvert. Like, what are the chances I can run it? Like, please go talk to Ryan right now. Like, go talk to Ryan. It's
it's
life is all about choices. Life is all about choices, and it's is something worth mentioning is no matter what happens to us, whatever happens, we face. If uh, if God is not doesn't know that you're able to handle it, he would not let you in this situation right now. So you're very able to handle this, and we cannot control the situations that happen surrounding us. We can only control what we do, our destiny, our how we respond to situations. The same thing I look at powerlifting. It's like I cannot uh, hit this number. I cannot be stronger without working on what I need to do and doing what I'm supposed to do. It's just the concept of everything is in our hands. Not everything, but we can react to it. And I was not able even imagining to be sitting here and telling the story. And now you just it's kind of like you always have someone to remind you. It's like it's okay, tell your story. Don't be afraid to tell your story because it's the way that Leah impacted me. For example, it's the same way I want someone else who's sitting in another side of the world to one day or even right now to help them. Um, I do have an announcement because
let's hear it.
this so because of all I also don't know how, but if you remember the message that I sent to you about the little announcement,
I was
that
gonna ask you, but yeah,
this one could be definitely one of the things that could move things even more forward, or just we can do even more with it, is being appointed as um, an ambassador, goodwill ambassador with the International Human Rights Commission for Women Empowerment, specifically for violence against women and girls. So, and also to be representative of Iraq. So this is one of the things that would just came about with powerlifting, and it's just being aligned together. And
How crazy is this? When you told me, I know you already told me in DMs, and I was like, "That's great. How did this happen?" It's so that's huge. This is that's and where's this? You're going to give a speech, right?
yes, so it will be part of a keynote speaker in December in Geneva. It's an annual summit with world leaders, just anyone who you've seen, basically, like, officials and everyone who's going to be watching. So it's going to be something. It's kind of like a new journey. I have no idea what's coming, but it's a new journey. And also just being like in the upcoming months, just maybe having like few trips and things like that. So we don't know.
Well, first off, this is huge, and it's only the beginning, and it's already huge. Okay, so God, I mean, you're doing big things, and talk about one thing I admire about you. One of the things I admire about you is you first off, you're always positive, never a victim. And the way you looked at things, the way you're like, some things are out of your control, but focus on what you can control. This happened to you. Everyone's going to have things that happen to you. What are you going to do now? The way you look at everything, even when the way you described high school, you know, it's a lot of people could have went sideways in a lot of these scenarios you were dropped in. Your life has been constantly getting dropped in scenarios that I can't even wrap my head around. And you've come out the way you've come out. And you've come out where people who like you're getting invited to Switzerland to be a keynote speaker and you're a goodwill ambassador and it's like crazy. And you're in the Holocaust Museum and all the rest of it, right? Bootlegging your own story in the Holocaust Museum and but like a lot of people who have dealt with a lot less carry it around differently, put it that way. And it doesn't mean you're not human and don't carry things around like difficult stuff. You know, obviously you are. Obviously you're going to have these feelings and whatnot, but it's just it motivates you to do good, do better, move forward, and help people, and be the change you want to see. A lot of people talk about being an activist or whatever, but they're not doing like you're doing. Like you literally are being the person you needed when you first came to America. You're trying to be the person that you needed when you're in Iraq, and you needed some symbols of, some hope. And you literally did this and got put on a freaking hit list for doing this. And you're like, don't worry. Like people aren't doing half of what you're doing, but trying to virtue signal like they are. Like I'm an activist because they made a post on Instagram where this is a whole other level. And yeah, you don't I don't think you're fully seeing like just how much of a plus you are to period, just all of us period. But in terms of a powerlifting story, it's amazing. Like our sport should be grateful you're around and that you chose us. And the way when I hear your story too, like I'm a hopeless romantic with this. I remember I told you like the way I view stories sometimes is like a writer wrote it, and I am that dude too. That's why when I picture people's stories, I say, like, can you imagine what if your story ends with you're doing this with the Iraqi women? Um, but it is almost like this is exactly the way it was going to pass, the way it was going to go from Iraq to America to Houston.
You, I'm a big believer. I think everything that you are put in life, every little situation, we talked about it. It's like you're there. You're here for a reason. It's supposed to teach you something, and you're supposed to take it. And yes, you can feel sad. You can be scared. You can feel anything you want to feel, but just know that it's happening for a reason. You're able to handle this. You're built to like, I'm not saying always be strong, because always being strong also you can break down. There are like, you know, cons and also pros and cons, but it's just that you are able to respond to this. You're able to handle this, because no champion is created from nothing. Is no jewel is not no jewel became without a jewel, without, like, diamonds are created under pressure. So those are all examples of just how great things, just, they have to be built and put under pressure. They have to be in certain situations to become this, because if we have never been in where we are, we're not who we are. And a lot of individuals who have been in so many, let's say, bad situations, they're able to turn their life and just become the greatest in certain aspects. It just depends on what you do with it. um, it's all about mindset. If I, for example, in competition, let's say I failed my first attempt or second attempt, I turn my brain, I turn, like, I shut down, like, whatever happened. I just create a short-term memory, like, let's move on. And everything happened, let's execute, let's do my best. If I'm not able to do it, it's okay. It happened for a reason. Like, I was just, I didn't have it that day. I did not, wasn't ready for it, whatever reason. I'm not strong enough for it. So whatever reason. So it's like that. It's all about mindset. And powerlifting exactly teaches you it's mindset. You have to go there with a strong mindset on the platform or in training. Otherwise, you just, you can't. You can't do it. So it's life and the sport.
And it is, yeah, it is 100%. Well, oftentimes, the expression, no one's going to save you, you got to save yourself. And in this story, the princess saves herself,
Mm.
right? And so you're going to make it happen, right? You're making things happen. Um, do you remember the Bobby Shez story I told you when I was telling you about the plane and
When it was crashed, right?
yeah, that story about how at one point he thought he was boxing to make the American Olympic team, the American Olympic trials. He won his match and he's going to go to the Olympics. And if you go to the Olympics as an American, and if you win, and he was supposed to win because he was high ranked and he had fought in other international events and won, but he had to, every year, you got to go through the American box office to make it again. So if he goes to the Olympics and wins, you turn pro as an Olympic gold medalist, you're like Oscar De La Hoya, Sugar Ray Leonard, like instant millions. If you don't, and you miss the Olympics, you could have 35 fights. Hopefully, you get a title shot and you're going to make your money. But it's a long road and you lose a couple fights and everything turns on you. And he thought winning the box office and making the team, it was changing his life, but he got a broken nose, kept getting infected, and the doctor pulled him from the team and he was pulled from the Olympics and he thought it was like the end, it was the end of everything. My God, he was so upset. So upset he thought like don't even this is the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. And he was sulking and the the American team takes off and his dad knocked on his door one day. He's like, come downstairs. I got to tell you something. And he's like, Dad, seriously. He's like, no, come downstairs. And he's like, you would give everything to be on that plane, wouldn't you? He's like, yeah, that plane went down, Bobby. They're all dead. And it really recalibrates. I told you that story when I would have given everything to have got give me my freaking laptop, get me out of here, whatever. And life just took me on a different path just for a little half hour, just for like an afternoon, evening, nothing big. And I'm like, wow, I'm really inconvenienced. And then when I sat there, I was talking to you and we were like talking about all these things. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. Just roll with the punches, man. It's all good. Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a far cry from the Bobby Shed story. The Bobby Shed story reminds me, you think you want certain things, and when you don't get them, you're like, oh my God, why? And you later on you realize you're better off. Just you're where you're supposed to be. And Bobby Shez, by the way, ended up winning 2 world titles as a pro, millions of dollars. He was a commentator later in life, like boxing. Literally, he was a commentator right up until the end. Like he had the most successful career you could ask for. But it just shows you, just hang in the pocket sometimes. You see what happens. It's not always bad. Let's see what comes of it. But yeah, we'll see. I'm very excited to see what happens with you with your engagements. We'll talk in the DMs, obviously, but let me know when all these things start popping up. And when is your next competition?
Next competition. So I was going to maybe going to, but it's not happening anymore for Bench Worlds. Um, but we don't know yet what's upcoming competitions this year. I'm planning based on the schedule for this year, how the traveling is going to play. But definitely, at least our plan is to look into like competitions upcoming with Arian and just start working because I did compete in February and March back to back. Um, so this is a time when we're working, planning to see what we can improve, doing a lot of volume. So that's what I've been
and
doing.
and and you do coaching?
I don't do
Like,
coaching, no.
okay.
That would be
Think
much
about
needed.
it. Do you think about it?
I think about it all the time. Yes.
Because yeah, I wonder, especially if it's online coaching and you could help people from distance. I would tell you one time, this one lady reached out to me from India, and I think she reached out to my personal account, and she said, I forget how exactly, essentially was like, I'm probably never going to meet you in life, but listen to the podcast, and it's inspirational, and kind of was like, just whatever, a little blurb. And we talked a little bit back and forth. She's a doctor, married, 2 kids, the whole nine, doesn't have a coach, uh, doesn't have the funds to be doing that kind of thing. She's got family and whatever. And I was like, I'll tell you, I could send you some programs I did. Like I did some programs that I was coaching Kafui Hochiyama, who's now with the Strength Guys. He went to the Worlds, broke a world record. I'm like, I got some programs. I was like, I'm too busy to take you on as an actual client, but I don't mind sending you some programs that well, I had a lot more than just Kafui. He's like the number one guy I had. I was like, I could shoot you some programs. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, why not? So I was sending her programs and doing small edits for her. And I was like, initially, I was like, look, I can't give you, it's going to be templated programs. I can't give you personalized because I'm so busy. But then as she starts gearing towards the Asian championships, and like, now her like husband's liking all of my posts and stuff, and they're like, her family is like, she told her family about me, and I'm like, shit, I got to make sure she does well. So that I'm starting to get more and more personalized because I'm like, she's showing me pictures of her husband and her kids on vacation. I'm like, shit, they're going to this Asian championships now. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my god, I'm coaching again, aren't I? And so I kept sending her programs right up until like she won the Asian Nationals and won like did a bunch of stuff, set some records and stuff, and was like super proud. And then she's showing me uh the local news was doing videos of her because it was somewhat odd for a woman to be doing this in where she's from and like anyways she was in like the local news and they had like a freaking parade or something for us. Crazy. You never know. So point is, you never know what's going to happen with you when your story gets out there, and where you're going to be put on the spot. And you're like, all right, you know what? I might be able to float you an 8-week program to get you started, but that's it. But that's it. And then next thing you know, you're like, holy shit, I got 20 clients. It's you can't, and I wasn't even charging this lady nothing. I'm like, she's like, oh my god, I don't know if I can afford a coach right now. I'm like, I mean, you don't got to pay me anything. You know what I told her? I said, at some point, somebody might come up to you in the same situation and just pay it forward and help them out and don't charge them.
Wow.
That's how you repay me, is give somebody else free service as well. Some girl's going to come to you for help who saw what you're doing. She's like, all right, that's what I'll do. So she's
Yeah.
got all these Excel files of all these programs, and somebody's gonna, I don't know. I know she had some people that she was helping out, so there it is. And that
Yeah.
actually made me feel good, better than like whatever money you give me monthly, because whatever, I got a job. Better than that, I felt good. Like, you know what? There it is. I helped her, she's gonna help someone else, and who knows what the hell's gonna happen. Good. That feels good. You
Yes, that's
know?
an amazing story. Absolutely. Like you created, like, you didn't know how this interaction could go. She took it so serious because she wanted it so bad. And later on, you don't know. I'm sure 100% it's she's going to have multiple athletes. She's going to start coaching. You're going to see like a whole new tree of like athletes that are created from this small from the spreadsheets that you're sending out the programs.
Can you imagine? It's yeah, you never know in life, man. I try to do, like most of us try to do, if you got an opportunity to do some good and impact somebody positively, you throw it out there and see what happens. I don't got to tell you because that's what you're doing, but it feels good, huh? To lay
I
your head
always
at the belt.
I always like say, "Oh, I'm just it's normal. I'm not doing anything," because I just like I don't know. It's just I feel like it's we're supposed to. At the same time, even with all the work that has been done for the past 7 years, I just see it as like a duty. It's something that you're just there. You're supposed to be doing it. But of course, we should be proud of what we do. We have to.
You know, people oftentimes like rag on social media, and like if someone goes off social media, people are like, oh my God, your life must have been so much better for that time you're off social media. And I get it to an extent because you disconnect and you become more present. And like, I do get that. There is for sure positives, but on the flip side, look at what social media does bring you and give you. Like these interactions I just talked about. I, I'm not going to meet these people or what, like, it's only through social media, or like any of this. A lot of it's just through social media. All the people you're going to reach, it's through like social media and things that have changed. Like there's all so much that you can do. Like it's all on your fingertips, literally.
Exactly. It depends on how you use it and how you want to truly for example, like this is one conversation has been going on for a while, and I see it a lot, like on threads, on Instagram posts. Like the fitness industry is very overly saturated. Everyone is becoming content creator. Everyone wants to be sponsored by brands and I personally don't have a sponsorship yet, but like it's my goal is not just to be sponsored. My goal is I'm showcasing what who I am, because there's only one version of you. You don't need to be copying anyone else or the algorithm or the trends. Just showcase who you are. There's only one version of who you are. Show if you have a story, everyone has a story. Tell your story. If you have a language that you speak, showcase, use a language, especially if it's a rare thing in your from you where you are. Um, do something unique with how you are in the fitness industry or in powerlifting. Personally, although I feel like I'm still kind of starting, but I did see growth and impact by the messages been receiving and reactions by just simply being who I am and just not being afraid to showcase it. And authenticity is key. Like just be authentic and know how to utilize your social media, because it's a you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know how you're going to make a difference, especially with something that if you love and you're passionate about. Um, so it all comes down to you.
If somebody understood your ability and what's about to happen with you and like the platforms you're going to be on, I'm talking even way bigger than powerlifting, you know, a company should start thinking about working with you. Like you have potential to be, like you are literally already an international goodwill ambassador. Talk about being a goodwill ambassador for a company. Like we're talking a lot bigger than that. So it would be, I would assume at a certain point, a company's like, okay, we got something here. We should work with Dina, but you never know. It's still early days. But yeah, you have there's a lot of potential right now with some of these. Who knows the adventures you're going to be on and some of the projects you're going to be on? Because this is the first keynote speaking you're doing. Oh, actually, have you done others before that?
So many. Like
Okay, so I was going to say, what am I talking about? I'm saying your story. So you've done a lot. You've done tons of this.
I've done interviews on TV for like more, political serious side, like for work. Um, Conferences, organizing, even like on the ground stuff, for example, protests, speaking, like within, let's say, federal buildings, like speaking to officials, um, media, a lot of like podcasts, just various things, especially
Oh
within
my
being the
God.
space. Yeah, you get to, if definitely media, if you can utilize it positively, you can. So yeah,
So you've at this point, are you super comfortable in these situations?
like speaking, uh, it shows that I'm comfortable, but I could have like such anxiety before, but I just, maybe sometimes it shows, maybe not. Like for example, I messaged you. I was like, "Hey, Ryan, I'm so nervous," and like I am
It's
nervous.
cute. It's
It is nervous. It is nerve wracking.
it's funny you messaged me and told me that. But it's probably the thing is, um, yeah, it probably helped that we already talked. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I get it. I get it for sure. Like I would picture the thing is so it's powerlifting, but it's not powerlifting, is it? Like King, when I try to explain people, like I have a powerlifting podcast, like people who aren't into powerlifting, like people from work or whatever, and they think I just talk. I'm like, they're first off, they ask like, so how long does a podcast episode go for? I'm like, man, I've had 2 hours, I've had three, like we're getting close to 3 hours, me and you, and they're like 3 hours, and I'm like, they're like, what is this, a Joe Rogan episode? What are you talking about for 3 hours? I'm like, man, powerlifting is why we sat down. I met them through powerlifting, but what we talk about could be anything. We're just, it's just how we started. And I'm like, you don't even know some of these people's stories. And we just go off. And I'm like, it's not question, answer. We just talk. And so, anyways, I say all that to say when you're talking about like maybe being nervous coming on, and I was gonna, wow, it's powerlifting, but I guess it's not just powerlifting. We're talking, talking. We're going deep into things. So I get it. You're
Yeah.
you're pretty brave, huh? Would you say?
Sometimes, but I actually say you can be brave even when you're nervous. Like one thing that my grandma who passed away, she told me, she said, Dina, never show that you're afraid. Even if you're afraid, like don't show it. Don't tell, like don't, just don't, because it's you always have to trust yourself and just be brave all the time. And then when I got into powerlifting, it became even more like I learned it even more. And I mean, we all get scared. We're humans, but it's okay. It's a normal feeling. Just take advantage of it. Um, One thing I learned is before, let's say, when I was a beginner, very new in powerlifting, before going for an attempt, uh, that scared feeling, I let it get into me and it would affect the number that I'm doing, the lift. But later on, I learned is those moments within 3 seconds that you have, you take advantage of that feeling and just go for it. Just execute, think about everything you're supposed to do, and just do what you're supposed to do. So
Would
right, but also it's okay to feel scared.
I would go as far as to say it's not courage, and this has been said before, but it's not courage unless you feel fear. Otherwise, it's not courageous.
Mm.
What's courageous is the fact you feel that fear and you go ahead and you do it anyways. That's courageous. Uh, it's like the story of the hero and the coward, and they're both hiding in a foxhole somewhere, we'll say. And the cowardice feels this fear and anxiety to the point where he shells up and he can't jump out that foxhole and run forward. The hero feels the exact same way. He gets up and he goes forward. That's the only difference. It's the only difference between the hero and the coward is what they do when they feel that fear, but they feel the same fear. And I think some people, when they feel the fear, they think, because I feel fear, I'm a coward. So then they start talking to themselves like that. Holy shit, I'm afraid. That means I'm a coward. And when they think about their heroes and whatnot, they're like, they wouldn't feel fear in this situation. I do, so I'm not them. Yes, you are. They feel the exact same way you feel. They just do what they're supposed to do, regardless. That's the only difference. So when you feel that feeling, you have a choice to make. That's all. That's all that means. And once you realize that, that's a cheat code to putting yourself into a lot of situations where people would be like, holy shit, weren't you scared? Weren't you nervous? And you did it anyways. And you're like, yeah, yeah, I was. Oh, you're just built different. Yeah, maybe sort of kind of, but no. I was afraid. I just did it because I knew if I didn't, I wouldn't, you wouldn't have experienced all the things you experienced. You wouldn't get done what you need to get done. It's one thing I would tell anybody when they're about to do something big like this, stuff like you're doing. Of course, you're going to fly to Geneva, Switzerland, keynote speaker. Of course, you're going to be nervous and all that. You got to do it. And being nervous and whatever, it's not a personal life. It wouldn't. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean nothing. How you feel doesn't matter how you feel. I don't got to tell you that. You've been through some tough stuff. You parked, you've compartmentalized your feelings and got things done.
It's good to get a reminder because sometimes, trust me, I forget it. Sometimes I also like no matter how strong you are, it's I always say that yes, I am strong. At the same time, it's good to have someone who can remind you. But it's ideal. Like right now, this is an ideal situation when someone is recognizing it. But a lot of times, it's yes, you have to remind yourself, or just you just have to face it no matter what, and just go for it. And yeah, not be scared. It's the keyword courage. I like the word courage. Like it
Yeah.
comes with yeah.
And you're also right that that resiliency is constantly tested. You don't ever not get scared. George St. Pierre is like a famous MMA fighter from Canada, and but he's a world champion. He's one of the greatest of all time. And he was so scared before a fight. Like, I mean, for days he didn't sleep, and he said it was brutal. The walk down to the cage was horrific for him, but he knew how talented he was. I mean, he forced himself to do it. But one time he was talking to a grizzled veteran saying, how many fights do I have to have until that goes away? After I've had 20, 25, 30, when I've had 50 fights, does it go away? Does it finally go away? And I can sleep the night before and walk down to the cage and be comfortable. And the guy is like, do you want the truth? And George said, yes. He said, it will never go away. You want to hear something else? You don't want it to, because that anxiety keeps you sharp. That anxiety, when you're in there, for him, he sees your shoulder drop a little bit. You're about to throw your jab. And when you're super anxious and you're sharp. And he's like, holy shit, I see this guy's shoulder drop. Woof, woof, woof. I'm answering. I read everything. I'm not calm and relaxed. I don't want to be relaxed. It's your friend. The anxiety is there on purpose. It's to help you. You're uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. And this is with everything in life. When you're going to Geneva to give this keynote, you're going to be uncomfortable. That's okay. It makes you elevate your game. It makes you dig deeper into your bag when you're putting together your notes. You're nervous. You're like, now what am I going to bring? Maybe I have some visuals. I bring video. Maybe I have something I played music wise. Maybe I play the news report from that day. Now I'm digging in my bag because I'm worried about it. I'm thinking about it, and it makes me think about it. It's a good thing. Anxiety and all that. And when you're like, well, maybe on my 50th time I do these, I don't feel anxious anymore. That's when you're going to start phoning it in, dragging your feet as you cross the finish line. It's a good thing. And if you are ever at the end and you're no longer feeling that way, someone who's young and hungry and anxious as hell is going to take your spot because you're not covering all your bases or whatever endeavor it is. So it's another way of looking at anxiety, and the stresses is like, it's not always a bad thing. It can be your friend. It forces you to dig deep and really uncover things.
This is so amazing to learn, and now I'm getting like more knowledge. I'm sure whoever's going to watch this podcast is going to, whether they're a new athlete or interested, it will teach you so much about life, and that's truly the feeling. It's like it never goes away, and I, like you said, I think you just even made me come to a realization it never goes away, and it's a good thing to have it because it means so much to you. And someone who's hungry, who's going to want it as bad and will feel obnoxious, who will be fearful because they want it so bad to get it done, you know?
Oh,
Um,
I'm not afraid of the guy who slept good the night before. I'm afraid
yeah,
of the guy who's been up all week thinking about it, and we're both going for the same thing. That
yes.
guy scares me. That guy scares me. He's going to come up with it. He'll come up with how to get it from me. Think
Yeah.
about that.
You know what? It reminded me of in Sheffield this year when there was a picture of all the lifters and it was posted as a meme in one of the pages. Um, but the girl who from Poland, who won Sheffield, she was the only one who was wearing shorts in the call. So it was like, oh, be afraid of the person who's wearing shorts in the call.
See, she knows you got to be uncomfortable. She
Yeah.
wanted to be a little bit uncomfortable. She's like, I'm getting too relaxed around here. All right. I got to stay sharp. So she wore shorts. I get the shit go. She's amazing, by the way. She's hilarious. Yeah, she's definitely the queen right now. I can't wait till the world championships. You know what I forgot for a second there? Sometimes when we're in these conversations, I am just into the conversation and I forget that this is a podcast that people all over the world are going to listen to.
Yes, yes. I have my followers who are waiting as well. They messaged me and said, please send us the link.
No, I
Um,
see you posting it. You're posting it in Arabic, but you have to translate. And you were like, all right, guys, you did say King List, but you were like, thank you for the way you described it. You're like going on the biggest podcast in the community. And
it
you,
is. It is.
and you, and you were like, show me support. Give me, I'm like, holy shit, all your people are going to listen. But, it's such a weird platform, like podcasts in general, because I've seen memes where people like listening to a podcast is oftentimes feels like you're the third person on the couch between two people having a conversation. You're just listening in, but it really is just a conversation. Not all of them, but some of them, if they're like this kind of format, it's just a conversation. And you at times get so comfortable going places, you're almost like, oh my God, oh yeah, thousands of people around the world are going to listen to this.
Mhm.
All over the world are going to listen to this conversation.
I'm just afraid that they're going to be asking me for subtitles. That's the only thing. So
Well, you know what? Um, I think when I post it on YouTube, it automatically does subtitles.
I hope so. I hope so.
Hopefully it's in Arabic
Yes.
because that's probably going to be.
I did tell them, hey guys, it's in English, so just no matter what, just please support it because um, it's like they already also know they are aware that there's no really much Arabic and Iraqi in general Arab women in powerlifting who are even um, I don't think it's ever been done on King of the Lifts either. So it's like this is something completely new, and they are just very excited about this whole thing, and they as in the sport themselves, they're just interested and they're very interested to support. We have this thing like within us in our nationality is when you see, or a lot of the countries too, when they see an individual from their own country representing them in certain ways, they just they love it so much. It's this thing like this heart that we have, like the pride. So it's like a pride thing that we have. Um, so yeah, it's an honor to be here as well. And um, I hope whoever's watching this will be impacted in some kind of way, whether from anywhere in the world.
It's a well, first off, it's an honor to have you on. Never stops amazing me like how lucky I am, and I'm so freaking grateful to have this podcast and have opportunities to have conversations like this. And I mean, like, these are some real deep conversations. Like, these are real conversations. And people come on here and open up about their story. And it's like amazing. And I don't know what I've done to be in a position where people come on here and are comfortable opening up like this, but I've had people come on with incredible background stories and tell me about them and totally open up. And I've had moments on here from like Jonathan Keiko to like women coming on here to some of their backgrounds when they were like assaulted and whatnot, and like some very difficult conversations. And I'm not sure how I've cultivated this situation where people feel comfortable come on here talking like this, but I am extremely grateful and always honored when someone comes on and does it. And there are times in my life, like when there were lockdowns or whatever, and this I had this. This I've been doing this since 2016. There have been so many, there's highs and lows that come in life, period. Period, there's highs and lows. And there I had this. I was gonna sit down and I was gonna have a meaningful conversation. Can't tell you how much it means to like just and it's almost like when you were a kid watching like those programs, right? You sit down and your phone is away and you're just gonna have a convo with somebody and you don't know where it's gonna go. And it's
Absolutely.
interesting and yeah, it's special. You know, most people, I don't know, a lot of people won't have anything like on the regular basis. I have these. You
Mhm.
think of how I can't even tell you how much different a person I am after having done this for years.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be the same person after hearing all these stories. And how fearless I am to talk to people now because I talk to so many people from so many places all over the world. Um, I don't know. It's you start realizing people are people and it's a lot easier than you think just to talk to people.
It all started with a vision, and it you I think what also made it so impactful for sure is having such a platform where it shares. First of all, you have the skill to speak to so many people from around the world because speaking is an art, and through storytelling and through learning people's stories, talking about just not just questions and answers, like you said, just learning and sharing ideas, sharing conversations, having difficult conversations. And people always remember through the stories. It makes an impact because it makes them feel a certain way. And that feeling they will always remember when they go ahead and listen and watch and they just move on with their lives. And that's why it grew so much more and more. And when I said it's the center of powerlifting, the voice of powerlifting, I truly meant it because it's truly is the voice and the platform for powerlifting because it brings all the powerlifters from around the world and highlights and look what has been done. Like it's during championships, world championships, and media, and so much that is doing like it's the center, the voice of everything. Um, so it's not
Thank
just
you.
like oh yeah, of course. So it's truly and I have actually powerlifters from my country here who are very like follow your page and um, when they see like even a for example when they see a world champion or athlete in the background I'm training they always message me, oh is this Russ, is this who else is in my gym, our gym I train in, just anyone in the background. and they would tag them in the comments. They're like, "Oh, is this person?" So it's like you don't know how you make an impact.
So
Yeah.
that's hilarious. That they're like the biggest is definitely going to be Russ. That would be that would be the biggest. I'm so glad you ended up at Corrupted Strength. It's yeah, and it's hilarious that you were actually there when I was there doing the podcast there.
Yes, yeah, it's just same place. It's just such a weird, like interesting timing how things work.
At the same time, too. We didn't even know each other. Just like through social media and whatnot. But yeah, it's you're gonna have a heck of a this is December that this big speech is gonna happen.
In December, yes, the keynote speech. There will be upcoming events before December that will
Mm.
be a little surprise. So we will see. I will just keep it low key so that, it's like to be a little surprise, but it will be part of it, which because it even surprised me. So I'm just gonna, because I'm trying to comprehend everything's happening. So I'm just trying to comprehend what's going on.
Yeah, take it a step at a time. Take it a step at a time and prep yourself. And yeah, there probably is a lot of stuff that goes into this. Little things will happen along the way. And you gotta, yeah, it's the good part of life, man. You don't want to know everything before it happens. So it makes it exciting is the anticipation. Oh, I don't know what's gonna happen. What's the next step? But keep me in the loop in the DMs, what you're doing and your next competition and whatnot. Let's do another podcast at some point and catch back up for sure. And I am super duper grateful for you coming on here. And we did a 3 hour conversation, pretty easy peasy. We could probably, if we don't careful, we'll do another 3 hours.
Yeah, I don't feel the time at all.
But I appreciate you coming on like this. And good luck with training. And I'm obviously we'll keep you in the loop. We'll be in the DMs and I'll be asking how things are going. And let me know when the next one you got going is.
Of course, yes.
And for people who follow you and everything you're doing, all the activism and also obviously the powerlifting and everything you're doing, what's the best place for them to follow you?
Definitely for sure. Instagram, Dina underscore powerlift. That's my main powerlifting page that I'm currently working on and just going to be sharing more content. And YouTube channel, also Dina Powerlift. So I'm also trying to do more content on YouTube and showcase the championship, the vlogs, lifestyle, things like that, training. So I do have more Arabic content, but I'm doing my best to combine Arabic and English. So everyone from, because I have followers, for example, in Asia, like I have from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and I have from Asia a little bit. But most of the audience are Middle Eastern region Arabic speakers, but I'm trying to combine all of it together. So have more, um, access to the different languages. So English and Arabic.
I do this one of the big things I like about YouTube, it does translate those subtitles for you automatically with their AI they have hooked up to it, which is amazing. Because I got the same situation where with King of Lifts, that's where the YouTube helps that people around the world can at least go to the YouTube channel and read subtitles in their native tongue, which helps. But I'm pretty sure, and I don't know, it's not all of the different languages, but I think there's quite a few. But anyways, you never know. Maybe you got to drop some videos in English as well. You're pretty good on Instagram for both.
Yeah, I try my best. Trying. More is
Never
coming.
more is coming. Yeah, I guarantee you that. Yeah, and let me know with all the stuff that we talked about too, with working in Iraq in that kind of venture.
Mhm.
If somebody can pull something off there, if you start making things happen in that direction, let me know. And my God, they got to do like a documentary, something about it. That would be crazy.
We're getting people excited here. Whoever's watching.
Yeah, well, I am. I'm getting excited about it. Just let me know when things are happening because you never know. I'll like, I don't know. You never know how life goes on. Just keep me in the loop because I got a feeling that would be huge. I would like, yeah. Anyways, I'll get myself excited. It's not happening yet. But anyways, All right. Everybody listening, please do subscribe. Give us high ratings as per usual. And until next time, six pack Lapadatt, six up, and we are out.